Melly's grandfather gifted her a farm. Little did she know it was located inside the royal palace and right next door to the king's bedroom. Every morning, the king woke up to the fragrant aroma of fertilizer. Melly was a bit worried at first. The king was known for his decisive and ruthless nature, but she had the proper paperwork and a legitimate claim. Who was she to be afraid of? Gritting her teeth, she moved in. The next day, she was happily cleaning her farm when 3 young men arrived. Seeing Melly weeding, they thought she was crazy, trying to farm inside the royal palace. They were about to have her dragged away. Melly scoffed, "Just try it. See what happens." Then, beaming with pride, she produced all the necessary documents. The young men examined the paperwork. Whoa, it's actually real. They then tried to buy the land from her at a high price. Melly finally had her own farm. She wouldn't sell it for any amount of money. Seeing this, the young men could only report back to the king. "Such a greedy person." The king exclaimed, "Strip her naked and throw her out." The young men hesitated. "She's a young woman, about 20 years old, Your Majesty." The king froze, embarrassed. The ministers below began murmuring amongst themselves. Annoyed, the king assumed Melly was just trying to get their attention. He immediately issued a decree. Everyone in the palace was to ignore the owner of Plot 79. They were to act as if she didn't exist. Then, the Minister of the Interior, Cumberbatch, stepped forward, confidently declaring he would handle the situation. That night, he went to the farm and found Melly. Melly was happily eating cookies at home. Seeing someone enter and noticing the shiny badge, she knew he must be a high-ranking official. She greeted him warmly, but he remained aloof with a sour expression. Still, he was her farm's first guest. Melly decided to offer him cookies and coffee. Seeing the food and drinks, Cumberbatch realized she intended to stay. This wouldn't do. He had to teach this opportunist a lesson. Looking around, he spotted a straw hat. He proceeded to unleash a verbal barrage at the hat. Melly was confused. Why was he talking to a hat? Cumberbatch sighed, telling her to give up. The king had issued a decree of silence. In other words, a social death sentence. Melly shrugged. As long as it didn't affect her farming, she didn't care. This infuriated Cumberbatch. He then played his trump card. As Minister of the Interior, he knew the law inside and out. He had at least a dozen reasons to demolish the farm and seize the land immediately. Melly panicked. She had to stop him. She grabbed a dusting cloth and shook it vigorously, sending dust flying everywhere. Cumberbatch choked. Not wanting to dirty his expensive clothes, he left with a parting threat. Looking at the messy room, Melly felt dejected. She remembered how her Aunt Martha always warmly welcomed the grumpy tax collectors, sending them away with smiles. But she couldn't even handle this small matter. And that Minister of the Interior, was he even human? He showed no compassion from the moment he entered. Suddenly, she remembered something and rushed out after Cumberbatch. "Did you really want that coffee, but couldn't have it?" she asked. Cumberbatch froze. Melly knew she'd guessed right. She invited him back to the farm tomorrow, promising he wouldn't be disappointed. Cumberbatch, intrigued, wondered what she was planning. A weight lifted from Melly's shoulders. She skipped outside, gathered a basket of fresh grass, grabbed her straw hat, and headed out. Because of the gag order, everyone treated him like air. But this was exactly what Melly wanted. This way, she could openly look for what she needed. She quickly found a patch of plump, juicy plums. After picking a full basket, she bustled around at home. By late into the night, she finally finished making what she wanted. Minister Cumberbatch woke up early the next day. He even instructed his subordinates to prepare for the demolition. When he arrived at Melly's door, he found it was very quiet inside. Upon opening the door, he saw a tired Melly with dark circles under her eyes. Melly warmly invited him to sit down and prepared tea and cake for him. Cumberbatch was angry when he saw it was coffee. She clearly knew he couldn't drink coffee, but Melly said this coffee was different from other coffees. Although he wasn't entirely convinced, he picked up the cup and examined it carefully. It didn't look like anything harmful. He took a small sip. His eyes widened instantly. The taste was rich and smooth, with a wonderful aroma. It tasted just like coffee, but it wasn't coffee. He couldn't help but take 3 large gulps. Melly said it was commoner's coffee, made from a weed called chicory. Cumberbatch was astonished and quickly asked how she made it. Melly explained with a smile that she roasted and ground the roots into a powder. Although it was a bit different from coffee, she knew how to roast it to achieve the same taste. Cumberbatch listened with an expression of understanding. Suddenly, he remembered the gag order. How could he disregard the king's decree and speak to Melly? At that moment, Melly held out the straw hat and told him not to worry. He was talking to the hat. Hearing this, The minister looked at Melly and suddenly found her much more agreeable. He took another sip. He hadn't felt this relaxed in a long time. Cumberbatch felt very happy and became more talkative. He said that because his work at the palace was tiring, he relied on coffee to keep himself going. He used to drink 7 or 8 cups a day. Then, he didn't know when it started, but he developed heart palpitations. At night, he couldn't sleep at all. The doctor said if he didn't quit coffee, he could die suddenly at any time. From that day on, his misfortune began. Sometimes, when he was too tired, he would secretly drink a few cups. But every time he did, his body would reject it. His stomach would ache, and his heart would race. But today was different. No matter how much he drank, he felt no discomfort. Melly explained that chicory was a healthy vegetable, and its roots could aid digestion and strengthen the stomach. Commoners couldn't afford expensive coffee, so they invented this commoner's coffee. Even seemingly useless weeds have their uses. Cumberbatch finally understood Melly's intention. You must be trying to teach me a lesson. Because I said farming was useless yesterday, you were upset, right? Melly quickly waved her hands. It wasn't because of that. Although I was hurt by those words, I quickly forgot about them. The reason I stayed up late making coffee is because you were a guest at Maloney Farm and the first guest at that. So I tried my best to entertain you with the coffee you like. I simply enjoy farming. Suddenly, Melly remembered she had also prepared dessert. Cumberbatch didn't really like sweets, but seeing Melly's expectant face, he decided to pretend to indulge her. But with one bite, he nearly swallowed his tongue. It was sweet, but not overly so, with a very natural flavor. Melly explained that because the plums themselves contained sweet juice, there was no need to add extra sugar. These plums were picked from His Majesty's courtyard. Cumberbatch was so surprised he stood up. A short while later, Cumberbatch had finished a plum tart and 3 cups of coffee. Melly was about to pour him another. Cumberbatch waved his hand, indicating he was full. Seeing his satisfaction, Melly broached the subject of her farm. She wanted to explain how she legally owned the land and that she genuinely intended to farm it, not sell it for a high price. Before she could finish, Cumberbatch said he understood. Melly was surprised, as she hadn't said anything yet. But Cumberbatch, as if having made up his mind, stood up to leave. He ultimately couldn't resist Melly's hospitality and left laden with gifts. His soldiers asked him about the demolition. Cumberbatch paused, then told them to disband. Back at his residence, Cumberbatch was still in high spirits. He canceled all his appointments for the day and pulled out a thick book. He needed to confirm something. He quickly found what he was looking for. It was just as he thought. It seemed a new wind was about to blow through the palace. That afternoon, Melly received the return basket from Cumberbatch, along with a letter. Inside, Cumberbatch began by apologizing, but what followed made Melly squeal with delight. Cumberbatch had found a perfect solution for her farm. In principle, private land wasn't allowed within the palace grounds. However, there was one exception: salons established for noble women. Although this law was old, it was still legally valid within the palace regulations. This meant no one could evict her. Just then, someone handed the king a newspaper. The king's face darkened as he read it. The headline read, "Conquering King Conquered." It was a deliberate taunt from Queen Lily. The king was exasperated that there was a farm in his palace. Lily never missed an opportunity to mock him. Cat-eared Nan, standing beside him, advised the king to wait. Haven't you already issued the demolition order? And you've seen that house. It has a huge hole in the roof. It'll collapse soon enough. You'll be able to see a pile of rubble through the window before long. The king felt a little better hearing this. Lily, however, wouldn't let up, wanting to make it clear to Melly that setting foot on that land was unwise. Melly soon discovered the hole in the roof. She encouraged herself not to be discouraged. She could fix it. But when luck is bad, even drinking water can be a choking hazard. As she climbed the ladder, it broke in two. She found some nails and started repairing the ladder, exhausted from the effort, but the nails wouldn't go in. Her stomach growled with hunger. She looked to the side. She saw an arrow. Although she didn't know who it belonged to, it seemed to be of good quality. She thought she could use it to make a kitchen utensil later. The king, watching from his balcony, saw this. He hadn't expected Melly to be so determined. It seemed the arrow he'd shot that morning had been a waste of effort. How could he get rid of her? He remembered Cat-eared and saying the house would collapse eventually. He wished it would rain heavily. Melly had dug up a large bag of potatoes and was wondering how to cook them. She quickly decided she would slice the potatoes thinly and make crispy potato pancakes. She would serve them with cheese and a fresh herb salad, along with a bottle of fruit and vegetable wine. And to make the meal perfect, she needed a dessert. She went to the king's back garden. Near the fountain, in a small grove of trees, she discovered some May apples. Unlike regular apples, the Jade Green May apples had a tart flavor and were often mistaken for being inedible. But actually, as long as you find a right cooking method, they are delicious fruit. Melly was making preparations when suddenly she heard footsteps behind her. Turning around, she saw several men in black cloaks enter the room. They had pale faces and terrifying eyes. They were the Feast Knights, one of the 4 Knight orders protecting the Empire. Melly felt a little nervous. Gripping her weapon, she asked them what they wanted. But the knights just stared at her, saying nothing. Melly suddenly understood what they were doing. They were trying to intimidate her and drive her away. Even though the farm was now legally protected, their murderous aura still frightened Melly. She shook her head firmly, thinking that since they couldn't use force to remove her, they could do whatever they liked. 2 hours passed in a blink of an eye. The knights were still standing there, motionless. Just as Melly was wondering what to do, she suddenly heard the sound of rumbling stomachs. She looked back carefully, making sure she wasn't imagining things. Then she thought at their age, it was indeed easy to get hungry. If they could get hungry, that meant they were human. A sudden inspiration struck Melly. The scene changed. Lily looked angrily at her subordinates. So, I sent you to suppress her by force, and you, while carrying out the mission on site, made rumbling stomach noises. At that moment, food suddenly appeared before you. You heard a voice from the universe saying you could eat. One subordinate said, yes, it smelled so good. Another added, that's right. I ate 4 bowls. I almost ate the plate too. Lily pondered. That rogue miss, why would she prepare food for them? A subordinate said, I'm not sure. I just saw her wash some dirt clods, then heat them over a fire. I also saw her chop up some wood blocks. Lily's body stiffened. Are you saying she's a witch? The subordinate quickly said, no. Although I don't know what the dirt clods were, I'm sure the wood blocks were meat. And the food from her place seems to exude a witch's. If you take one bite, you're doomed. Suddenly, Lily remembered that the second group was currently on the mission. She got up and headed towards the farm. Arriving at the farm, she expected to find a mess made by her subordinates. But the scene was clean and tidy. She noticed a fruit and vegetable tart on the table. Could it really be as magical as they said? With a skeptical attitude, she picked up a piece and put it on her. She chewed it thoughtfully and then licked her lips. Having only tasted a crumb, she hadn't gotten the full flavor. She picked up a larger piece and took a bite. Wow, this is so delicious. The moment it entered her mouth, she could feel the crispness of the fruit and the sweetness of the fruit and vegetable jam gently coating it. This was even better than the desserts from the most high-end dessert shops. Luli now completely understood what her subordinates had meant. Just as Luli was eating with great enthusiasm, Melly suddenly appeared behind her, saying, "It would be even better with a cup of coffee." Luli was so startled, she started coughing. Seeing this, Melly thought that perhaps she should have said hello first. Handing over a cup of coffee, she said, "You choked, didn't you? A cup of coffee should make you feel better." Lily took the coffee and smelled a unique aroma. She drank most of it in one go. She had already been craving the tart, and after the coffee, she found herself wanting it even more. But only half of the tart remained. What could she do to justifiably eat the rest? At that moment, Luli thought that the gag order was truly annoying. How could the king issue such a foolish decree? Melly also saw that she really wanted to keep eating. Picking up the straw hat beside her, she said, "I have a straw hat here that can understand human language." Lily, upon hearing this, thought, what? This is possible. She first apologized to the straw hat. "Because the taste is truly delicious, I lost my reason." Melly was happy that someone enjoyed her cooking. She urged Luli to finish the rest and not be polite. Luli ate while praising Melly's skill. "It's truly amazing." Previously, in Luli's eyes, desserts had to be sweet. Even a hint of sourness would make her disgusted. But this fruit tart was completely different. Although sour, it was very delicious. Melly, holding the small straw hat, explained the making process. Lily was shocked. "So it can be done this way?" Melly said, "Farmers will taste any food they encounter. Even if it doesn't taste good, they'll find a suitable way to cook it." Hearing this, Lily felt it tasted even better. Especially this fruit and vegetable jam. Drizzled over sweet vanilla ice cream, it must be delicious. If used to spread on milk bread, it would definitely make a perfect afternoon tea sandwich. Adding it to iced, sparkling water should also be quite good. Melly's pigtails perked up as she listened. "You seem to really like desserts," Melly said. Luli said she always wanted to be a holy knight, but when she ate desserts as a child, they would mock her for being like a woman. So she pretended not to like desserts. Melly then realized she was a woman. Luli was also surprised. "You didn't know who I was." "I'm Luli, captain of the feast knights. I'm 22 years old and a woman. Melly had guessed she was a high-ranking official, but didn't expect her to be the captain. Moreover, she was the important figure who appeared in school exams. It was rumored that among the king's trusted aides, there was a knight disguised as a man. But I never dreamed you'd be dressed so much like a man. Lily said, I haven't changed my heart into a man's. You can think of me as an older sister who's skilled with a sword. Melly was delighted. Would you really be willing to be the Straw Hat's older sister next door? Just as Lily was about to agree, suddenly her subordinate burst in. Lily froze. What should I do? My subordinate saw everything. How can I discipline him in the future? Then she ran off without looking back. Melly felt a little disappointed. Such a good taste-testing genius had run away. When Lily returned, she was rebuked by her friends. They were very disappointed in her. They even said it was all Melly's scheme, using food to increase intimacy with others. If she's truly so innocent and kind, how could she know how to exploit legal loopholes and start slaying dragons? Lily also fell into thought after hearing this. Could I really have been deceived by Melly? Suddenly, she saw Lord Cambert nearby. If slaying the dragon wasn't Melly's idea, but someone helped her, they would possess professional legal knowledge and super analytical skills, coupled with reckless execution. Besides the cunning minister of the interior, Cambert, who else could it be? Plus that unique coffee aroma on her. Lily had guessed the answer. It was Cambert who helped Miss Melly. After knowing that the Minister of the Interior had helped Melly, Lily decisively chose to side with him. After all, Melly's cooking was simply too delicious. Exhausted after a long day, Melly collapsed on her bed that evening. She was worrying about the hole in the roof. If it rained in the next few days, she'd be doomed. Suddenly, the hole was gone. Melly was stunned. Could there be a fairy godfather? When she ran outside to look, she was shocked to discover the yard was piled high with wooden shovels, and the originally broken ladder was brand new. And just then, a rose fell from the sky, and a small card. He only understood after opening it. These were all made by the knights to thank him. The next day, the king woke up in high spirits. He wanted to see if the house next door had collapsed. He looked, and the house was damn better than yesterday. How could this be? Wasn't it agreed that it would be demolished? He suddenly felt powerless. Turning his head, he saw Luli strolling around below. He immediately yelled for her to come up. He pointed at the house and told Luli to look. After looking, Luli felt a little guilty. She was thinking about how to clear her name, but seeing the king's posture, he was going to get to the bottom of it. She immediately said she didn't know. Don't ask me. I have something to do. I'm leaving. Not long after leaving, she ran into Melly struggling to carry 2 buckets of water. She took one of the buckets and greeted her. Melly saw it was her and asked when the knights were coming today to suppress her by force. Luli said the knights wouldn't be coming anymore. The farm was now completely legal and compliant, so it was canceled. Melly seemed a little disappointed upon hearing this. She was actually quite looking forward to the knights coming. After putting down the water bucket, Lily wanted to leave. Melly immediately said, "You still have half a fruit and vegetable tart left from yesterday. Why don't you finish it before you go?" Hearing there was food, Luli immediately stopped leaving. While eating, she invited Melly to go out together on Sunday, but Melly flatly refused. Lily was quite upset and asked her why. Melly thought for a moment and said she still had some land to plow. Lily never thought that one day she would lose to plowing. "And can I help you plow the fields?" Melly didn't object to this. She even told her to wear comfortable clothes. In a blink of an eye, Sunday arrived. Lily dressed appropriately and even carried a hoe. But after gathering with her 2 other subordinates, they were about to head to Melly's farm. Unfortunately, they ran into Cambert and Sigrid. Cambert was sharpening his claws on a nearby tree. He was just about to speak to Luli when crash, a tree fell directly onto his head. This tree was National Treasure number 354, also known as General. Luli and Sigrid were terrified, intentionally damaging a national treasure, and right in front of the guards. Cambert immediately knelt down. His pearl tail tried to hide the branch, but Lily snatched it away. Looking closely, she discovered that General had already begun to rot. Everyone was shocked. How could General be sick? Lily turned and angrily scolded Cambert. "I told you to change that bad habit. You didn't listen, and now look. What are we going to do if this is discovered?" Cambert hung his head. "According to the special National Treasure law, you will have to relinquish your position as captain of the Holy Knights." Lily cried out, then quickly think of a solution. Sigrid said, "The only way is to cure the tree." Cambert immediately jumped up. "Which of you two knows how to heal a tree?" Sigrid said, "Lawrence should have experience in this area." Lily told him to forget it. "If he finds out about this, we're finished." Hearing this, Cambert instantly wilted like a frosted eggplant. At this moment, Lily suddenly thought of someone. A short while later, Melly looked dumbfounded at the three people who had suddenly appeared before her. "Is something the matter?" she asked. Lily said, "Our general is sick." Melly was confused. "Who is General?" Lily explained, "General is a spring fish tree. He's also the mascot of the Royal Palace training grounds. But now he's suddenly fallen ill." Cambert dropped to his knees with a thud. "This is all my fault. I've always liked to sharpen my claws on him. That must be the main reason he's sick." Lily said, "If this gets out, we're done for. Cambert will have to relinquish his position as captain of the Holy Feast Knights." Sigrid also said that Cambert didn't do it on purpose. "General is just temporarily ill. We can cure him quickly." Cambert hung his head. "But we don't know anything about trees." After listening, Melly said, "Ask me. I can heal him." The three of them suddenly saw hope. After Melly's examination, she found his condition was even more serious than imagined. He needs immediate treatment, but because she came in such a hurry, she didn't prepare anything. 10 minutes later, everything was ready. Melly first dug out all the rotten parts. Then she picked up a bottle of wine and chugged it down, leaving Cambert stunned. "So you had me bring wine for you to drink." But he couldn't understand Melly's next move. Melly explained, "Wine corks are made from the bark of cork oak trees, so we can use it in place of bark as the general's coat. The wine used in the royal palace must have high-quality, solid corks. I want to use this to protect the general's more severely damaged areas." Soon, Melly finished treating all the areas. "The rest is up to the general himself. Let him rest well tonight, and we'll check again tomorrow." At this time, Melly was quite confident in her skills. But the next morning, Melly discovered that the general hadn't improved at all. Cambert was also a little disappointed. Melly comforted him, saying maybe it was too soon. "Let's observe for another day." But on the third day, the general still hadn't improved. Cambert had given up struggling, ready to be dismissed. But Melly didn't want to give up just yet. On the way back, she kept thinking about whether she had missed something. She carefully recalled all the details of their conversation. Then she remembered something. She had previously observed that the general's decay was severe and there were many insects. So she had been misled by these. She had to quickly confirm whether her guess was correct. After digging out some soil, she found that it was indeed as she thought. Without time to explain everything clearly, Melly told them to quickly prepare lime powder and cabbages. Based on the general's size, they would probably need 30 to 40 cabbages. The three of them saw that she had a solution. Melly carefully checked the condition of the roots. Although they didn't look good, she was thankful that everything was still in time. Soon after, Melly buried the lime deep in the soil. She also planted the cabbages around it. She said that the general had actually been poisoned. The three were surprised. Could someone have wanted to poison the general? Melly said yes, and that the general was almost killed, poisoned by a fertilizer, no less. Melly asked them if something had happened before, something that made everyone start to worry about his health. Cambert became a little uneasy. Everyone had seen him sharpening his claws on the general's trunk. Everyone said if he kept doing that, something would happen to the general sooner or later. Melly guessed what happened next. "So, after hearing everyone's concerns, you took some action. But you weren't the only one. The other two, worried about the general, did the same thing. All three of you, coincidentally, gave the general fertilizer," Melly said. "The problem lies here. All three of you chose fertilizer. The excessive phosphorus in the soil caused the general to be poisoned, and phosphorus poisoning has very similar symptoms to pest and disease damage. Since this is the first time I've encountered such a situation with such a large tree, I didn't notice it before." Melly wanted to know exactly how much fertilizer they had used. Melly continued, "The lime will block the tree's roots from absorbing the phosphorus, and these Napa cabbages can absorb excess phosphorus. The general will definitely pull through. Please give him a little more time." Later that day, they discovered the general had indeed become vibrant again. Cambert suddenly remarked that while friendship is good, sometimes trying to help a friend can backfire. He finished speaking only to realize Melly was gone. They then saw she had already run quite a distance. Cambert was at a loss for words. Lewis said that's just how she is. After doing what needs to be done, she hurries back to her beloved farm. Sigrid said, "We haven't even thanked her yet." The two looked at each other, realizing they had misjudged her that day. She wasn't a cunning opportunist after all. The king decided to stop waiting passively. "You want a farm? I'll give you a downpour. Let's see how you manage then." The king summoned the sage, Rasta, and approved his artificial rain experiment. The experiment was to take place directly above Melly's farm. Meanwhile, Roland was taking his good friend's twin sisters on a spring outing, which happened to be near Melly's farm. After discovering Roland had fallen asleep, the twins exchanged a look and immediately thought of something fun to do. They started braiding his hair. Roland, seeing them enjoying themselves, pretended to be asleep. But before long, he actually fell asleep. The twins, bored with their game, ran off to pick flowers and make garlands. Just then, it suddenly started to rain. Children of the Saxon family are very fragile before the age of 10. Even a small cold could be fatal. At this very moment, the two little ones got lost. Soon, the rain soaked their clothes. The younger sister was shivering all over and could barely stand. She cried, "Sister, I'm so cold." If this continued, her life would be in danger. The older sister yelled for help, hoping someone would come. Her voice grew weaker and weaker. Her eyelids grew heavy. Then, in a daze, she saw someone walking towards them. Unable to hold on any longer, she fainted. Melly carried one in her arms and another on her back, bringing them back to her farm. Then, braving the heavy rain, she went out and gathered a lot of catnip. She made the catnip into medicine. Melly carefully fed the medicine to them little by little. Soon, the two little ones opened their eyes. Seeing they were awake, Melly told them not to speak to her and to pretend they couldn't see her. The two little ones didn't understand at first, but then their eyes widened in realization. "You're a fairy, right? A fairy saved us," Melly tried to explain, but the two little ones were too excited and wouldn't listen. Elsewhere, Roland was frantically searching for the twins. He was filled with guilt. If anything happened to the children, how could he face Sigrid? Then he spotted a hair ribbon on the ground. Melly's farm was the only place nearby. He pushed open Melly's door and found the twins were indeed with her. Seeing Roland, the little ones asked if he had also come to the fairy's house to escape the rain. Hearing this, Melly realized they knew each other. She figured he must be the one who lost them. She was about to reassure him, but one of the little ones spoke first. "The fairy sister found us. She gave us fairy medicine and dried our clothes. And she made us delicious milk tea." Roland finally understood what had happened. Melly sensed Roland had something to say to her. Points to a nearby straw hat, "Because I don't have time to fetch it right now. Please address any comments to that." Roland blushed crimson. He had misjudged Melly all along. Today, if it weren't for this young lady under a gag order, my friends and I would have suffered a terrible misfortune. He would be forever in her debt. Just then, Lewis and Cambert arrived at the farm. They were surprised to see the twins there. The children greeted them enthusiastically. Cambert stiffened, likely having guessed what had transpired. One of the twins tugged on Cambert's clothes. "Mister, say hello to the forest fairy." Cambert glanced at Melly, who looked slightly smug. He told the child that she wasn't a fairy and that they couldn't greet the owner of the house. The child didn't understand why. Cambert explained, "It's His Majesty's order. The king mistakenly believes she will ruin our country, so he ordered everyone to ignore her." The twins were shocked. "But she's not. Why would the king give such an order?" Lewis chimed in, defending Melly. "Even these little children understand, yet some people still can't see the truth." Roland knew he was referring to him. He immediately made his stance clear. "This is outrageous. Everyone is equal. Why should she be treated like she's invisible?" Lewis agreed. "Now you understand." But the matter wasn't over. The king was still unaware of what had happened. It wasn't until Roland found him and explained the situation that he realized the gravity of his actions. Roland said, "Because of the gag order, I couldn't say her name or express my gratitude. So now, using my authority as a member of the King's National Policy Advisory Council, I request you to revoke the order that severely damages the empire's reputation and its citizens' self-respect, namely the gag order effective from May 2nd. The king's mind was in turmoil. Could his prejudice have truly led him to misjudge her? What was her purpose? Could it be, as she claimed, simply to help? Lewis added, "Roland is right. Acting on your own initiative might work on the battlefield, but it's different in the palace. Why else would we have a National Policy Advisory Council?" The king, irritated by their remarks, snapped, "Of course, I'll take responsibility." Lewis looked at him expectantly, but the king changed his tune. "While I made a wrong decision, that's all I'll admit to. apologizing to her. No way. Cambert cheerfully replied, we understand. Let's not force the issue. Let's just forget about it. However, what do you intend to do about your mistake today? The king pondered seriously. Meanwhile, after the rain stopped, Melly played outside with the twins while they gardened. As the three were enjoying themselves, the twins spotted Roland approaching. Roland ran towards them, shouting, Miss Melly, run. Melly quickly hushed him, saying there was no Miss Melly here. Ignoring her, Roland continued, Miss Melly, thank you for saving me today. From now on, all the knights of Britannia will be your dearest friends. As Melly stood there flustered, Lewis took her hand. Thank you for feeding my starving subjects and letting me taste the most delicious cho farci in the world. I swear, Lewis, Galliard, and everyone from the Nobley bloodline will be your friends. Cambert added, not to mention the Lombard family and all the catfolk of the Ninth Slope. You are our hero. Sigurd also said, I will always remember how you saved the Saxon family, both heirs. Our entire family will never forget. Melly looked at them with concern. What's wrong? My gag order has been lifted, Cambert said while walking from now on. Miss Melly can speak freely with us. He pulled a document from his pocket. His Majesty has admitted a serious error in his choice of location for the artificial rain experiment. To compensate Miss Melly for the significant loss to her farm, His Majesty has decided to grant Miss Melly a parcel of land belonging to the state. The farm will be expanded by half a plot on both sides. Melly hadn't expected any compensation and was touched by everyone's efforts. But I can't accept, she said. He massacred so many of my seedlings. Cambert replied, no one is forcing you to forgive him. Forgiveness and compensation are two different things. This is what Miss Melly deserves. He damaged your crops, so he should pay the price. Melly thought about it. He's right. His Majesty ruined my fields. It would be too easy on him if I just let it go. So she accepted the compensation. Then Lewis suggested, why don't you treat us to a delicious meal? Sigurd started to say, what nonsense are you talking about? We should be the ones treating. But Melly interrupted, agreeing. Come over for dinner tomorrow night, everyone. But everyone needs to bring their own chair. Only Cambert, the show-off, chose to carry the largest one. Compared to the joyful atmosphere at the farm, the king's residence seemed rather desolate. He took a bite of steak. Ugh, so bitter. He took a sip of red wine. This is bitter too. Just as the king was feeling down, Cambert, the minister, walked in. Why are you dining alone, Your Majesty? Don't you even have a friend to talk to? The king scoffed. They're just off on some appointment. Cambert thought, just keep pretending. There's no such thing as a flawless tree. You should learn to accept it. The king retorted, if you had to wake up to the smell of fertilizer every day, you wouldn't think so. Cambert sighed. It's still better than the smell of blood on the battlefield. Maybe you'll get used to it. The king didn't want to continue the conversation. Have a seat. Try the prawns and oysters that just arrived. Cambert replied, compared to this food that's about to get cold, that I'm more curious about what Melly's first dinner at the farm will be like, even if it's just to get a whiff of it. Good thing I can come and go from the farm freely. The king was perplexed. Isn't a farm a place where anyone can come and go freely? Cambert replied, not at all. If the farm owner doesn't like a guest, she can have her loyal knights throw that person out at any time. The king felt like this was directed at him. Then Cambert took out a gift box. I came to deliver this. The king opened it to find chocolates. Cambert said, I figured you wouldn't have much of an appetite. It's a pity the king of the empire can't choose his neighbors. That night, the king sat alone on his balcony, secretly peering at the neighboring farm, pondering what magic it held. Everyone had only visited once, yet they had changed so drastically. What kind of person is the owner of that place? The next day, the king found 2 small vials. He opened one and put a drop in his eye. In an instant, his pupils changed from red to black. He sprayed the other vial on his hair, changing it from gold to black. The king looked in the mirror, satisfied with his appearance. He donned a cloak and went out. Walking down the street, he didn't attract any suspicion. From this day forward, he would set aside an hour each day to spy. No, to observe his new neighbor. As they say, know your enemy. What is that thing? A chick. The chick, seeing a stranger, immediately started chirping incessantly. The king, afraid of being discovered, grabbed the chick and squeezed its beak shut. Melly happened to witness this scene. A strange person abusing a chick. This was not part of the king's plan. While he was racking his brains for an excuse, Melly spoke first, saying the chick was a local resident, not a foreign spy. Let go. The king, though unsure what she was talking about, put the chick down. He quickly thought of 800 ways to handle the situation, but rejected them all. Melly continued, I already know who you are. You're His Majesty, the king. The king was startled and quickly denied it. Melly continued, the secret inspector, right? The king was relieved. At least his true identity hadn't been discovered. He hadn't been completely exposed. The king was about to make a quick escape, but Melly shouted, asking his name. If you don't tell me, she said, I'll tell everyone that a strange person invaded the farm today. The king thought, that won't do. If they find out it's me, well, I put my face. So he blurted out a random name, Valentine. Melly diligently wrote it down in her little notebook. She explained it was a habit from childhood. She wrote down the names of anyone of high status. Then, Melly slammed the notebook shut and angrily told the king to open his eyes wide and see if there was anything he was looking for on the farm. The king was taken aback. What is she talking about? He thought. He decided to play along and said yes. Now, it was Melly's turn to be taken aback. You say yes. Do you see any drug-related plants here? These are all household vegetables and spices. Faced with Melly's death stare, the king realized he had misunderstood her. Melly, seeing his expression, knew he had no idea how to identify crops. That king, such a sly fox. He deliberately sent someone who knows nothing, so he can catch me in the act. What a wicked heart. Well, you go back and report to the king that I'm researching how to overthrow him. The king was speechless. I'm not a liar. He insisted. Melly blinked at him. This guy was unexpectedly honest. She felt a little guilty. I'm sorry. I spoke too harshly. Then she warmly invited the king inside. He didn't know why, but he followed her in. Just as he was about to leave, Melly suddenly leaned in and examined his necklace. What's this? She asked, pointing. The king explained, an elderly sage gave it to me a long time ago, but I haven't figured out its secret yet. I call it the sage's stone. Melly said, that's not right. It's clearly a seed. How did you know it's a seed? Isn't it obvious? Just like everyone can tell the difference between people, dogs, and cats. I can tell at a glance that it's a seed, but it looks strange. I don't know what kind of seed it is. But since a sage gave it to you, it must be a very mysterious plant. We should plant it. The secret must be hidden in the plant that grows from the seed. The king hesitated. It sounded absurd, but what if it actually sprouted? Back at his residence, the king immediately went to his laboratory, took out the necklace, and asked, is this a seed? Cambert looked at it and thought, whoa, the king is testing me. It depends on what your majesty wants it to be. If your majesty says it's a seed, then it's a seed. If your majesty says it's not, then it's not. The king was annoyed. What nonsense are you talking about? I'm asking you academically, could this possibly be a seed? From an academic standpoint, Cambert stammered, you should have said that earlier. Since it's a mineral, and minerals can't be seeds, the sage's stone isn't a seed. I mean, if it wasn't the sage's stone from the beginning, but a seed, then it would be a seed because a seed is a seed. The king retorted, aren't you stating the obvious? Someone, drag him out and execute him. The king then summoned a biologist. The biologist examined it closely, but it didn't look like a seed at all. The king suggested, why don't you try planting it in the soil? If it's a seed, it should sprout soon. The biologist planted it in a pot, and as he lifted it to place it in sunlight, the pot shattered. Melly, witnessing this, was astonished. It should be planted in water, she said, judging by its appearance. But it's a type of lotus seed. She then tried to pull the king inside. The king shook her off, saying, I'm not a child. I can go myself. He left Melly bewildered. Inside, Melly discreetly found a hammer. While the king wasn't looking, she raised it and, bam, brought it down on the seed. The king was stunned. Melly shrugged, I had no choice. The seed is so old. Its shell is too hard. It needs help to breathe. The king was dumbfounded. He'd never heard of such a thing. He felt like a fool in front of Melly. After she finished preparing the seed, she placed it in a wash basin. She carefully observed it, noting that it seemed to be doing all right. Suddenly, the king remembered his underwater subjects frequented the farm. If they saw the seed, his identity would be revealed. Panicked, he jumped up and yelled, Miss Melly. Melly was startled. What are you shouting about? She asked. The king asked, has it sprouted? Melly pouted, it takes time, at least 2 or 3 days. She then placed something on the table. Tajda, dinner's ready. Fried steak. So that's what she was up to. Melly asked, what are you standing there for? Eat. Don't tell me you don't know how. Before the king could reply, his stomach rumbled loudly. Melly heard it. Mortified, the king mumbled, I have to go, and left. Melly was left alone, feeling hurt. Why did he leave? Is the steak not good? I guess I'll have to eat both portions myself. But the next moment, the king returned. I can't come here every day to check on the seed, he said. If it sprouts, leave a sign like a chess piece. And please, let's keep this a secret. Melly, though confused, agreed. Back at the palace, the king, remembering Melly's simple yet tempting steak, immediately requested fried steak from the chef. Meanwhile, the royal kitchen was bustling. The head chef opened an oyster and drizzled it with lemon juice. He hoped His Majesty would appreciate this taste of heaven. Just then, the butler arrived, saying the king wanted fried steak. Though puzzled by the sudden request, the head chef complied. He selected the most tender beef, marinating it for 81 minutes. After frying, he placed it on a bed of grilled prawns, finishing it with Alphonse sauce, made from 30 ingredients. The head chef was confident in his dish. However, after one bite, the king told him to keep it simple next time. Just a plain fried steak would do. It made the head chef think, His Majesty is definitely testing my loyalty. I heard His Majesty's subjects all turn against him because of Nongcha's cuisine. His Majesty is in a very bad mood because of this. I can't just honestly obey that order. I, 5 Lyridin, will always be His Majesty's most loyal servant. The next day, Melly discovered the seed had sprouted. This is much faster than expected. Melly took out a blanket and covered the entire roof with it. She thought this should be noticeable enough. After doing all this, she felt a chill in her stomach. She thought, today I must have Mr. Valentine try my cooking. She thought he would arrive when the meal was almost ready. But when she turned around, the king was standing right behind her. Melly suspected this guy had been staring at her roof the whole time. The king thought, you suspect correctly. Melly brought out the basin. The king was very excited. It really was a seed. Melly said it looked a little withered. She didn't know if it was because it was too old or because it wasn't acclimated to the water. It would be difficult for the seed to thrive like this. The king suddenly had an idea. Why not just use growth magic to make it grow? Melly thought this was a bit extravagant, because long-term use of magic would disrupt the balance of nature. So in Britannia, using magic required paying hefty taxes. It seems Mr. Valentine is very, very rich. The king was a little embarrassed. Because he was the king, he didn't have to pay taxes to use magic. The king said he would prepare the growth magic tomorrow, along with all the information on aquatic plants. Melly gave the rich man a thumbs up. Then she suddenly remembered her steak. She told the king to wait. The fried steak would be ready soon. Mentioning fried steak made the king blush. By the time Melly finished frying the steak, the king had vanished. This made Melly a little mad. Why did he leave again? I've eaten fried steak for 7 meals straight. She stabbed a piece viciously, vowing to make him try it next time. The next day, the two were ready. The king took out the growth magic and cast it on the seed. With a splash, the seed in the water bloomed into a beautiful lotus flower. Melly was also seeing this kind of lotus for the first time. The king immediately began consulting the Balau. When they found it, both of them were shocked. It turned out to be a poisonous plant. Legend has it that a hero king and his men drifted to an island. The islanders fed them a strange fruit, and those who ate the fruit lost all their previous memories. From then on, they only cared about lying around and eating the fruit, and they wanted to stay on that island forever. In the end, the hero king forcibly tied his men to the ship and escaped the island. It turned out those people weren't sages, but demons preying on travelers. Hearing this, the king remembered that when he was on the island, they had indeed offered him food. But the king saw how poor they were, so he didn't eat. He looked carefully again. He noticed that this flower seemed a little different from the one on the tree. Melly asked what had happened on the island. The king said nothing much happened. He just saw them meditating under the scorching sun and felt sorry for them. So he built them a shelter like that. Not only that, but he also repaired the hut that had been blown down by the storm. And seeing that the well was too dirty, he dug them a new one. Melly didn't expect him to do so much for them, even when he was in trouble himself. The king said he just didn't want to waste time while repairing the ship. Besides, those messy things were an eyesore. Melly seemed to have discovered something. She found 4 spoons and placed them randomly in front of him. Then she told him to just look at them quietly. Sure enough, the king couldn't stand it after a short while and arranged the 4 spoons neatly. Melly said he definitely had OCD. The king said, doesn't everyone do that? Melly shook her head. The people on that island must have thought you were crazy. Everyone else was so lazy, and you were ridiculously diligent. So, by giving you the seed, they hoped that when you planted this flower, you would forget those trivial matters and enjoy some leisure time, the king said. Someone recently told me to rest more and relax. Melly said, that's exactly why I wanted to recommend the farm to you. Come here when you're free, drink some coffee, watch the seeds sprout and grow on the farm, and clear your mind. If she really wanted to recommend something to the king other than wine, she told him to sit still and wait for her return. Melly quickly returned with a glass of wine and urged him to try it. She said it was the night's wine. The king had sworn not to eat anything here, but wine probably didn't count as food, so he took a small sip. The next second, the king felt like he was in twilight. Melly said, "You feel it too. Usually grapes are harvested in October, but sometimes people intentionally leave some. Even if frost comes, they don't cover them. The grapes that endure until the very end have a very rich flavor. That's why this wine is called the night's wine, like an aging knight who holds out until the end on the battlefield." The king liked the name. Seeing him enjoying the wine, Melly asked if he wanted some appetizers. Having finished the wine, the king had long forgotten his vow. Melly asked him to say whatever he wanted to eat. Slightly tipsy, the king, no longer thinking about wine, had been craving a simple fried steak. He forked a piece and put it in his mouth. The texture was tender and crispy. This was exactly what he had been wanting. The king couldn't help but think of the fried steak his own chef made. What the hell was that? He thought. Doesn't your conscience hurt serving something like that? Melly brought out 2 skewers. He took one and bit into it. This is delicious too. He quickly finished the first skewer. But this skewered at the stick looks familiar. Isn't this the arrow I shot at her in the second episode? The king shook his head. He must be drunk. Melly mentioned that she would be planting grapes soon. She planned to level the neighboring area and create a large vineyard. The king was shocked. Good heavens, you're going to level my palace. How are we supposed to have fun then? He stood up to leave, but Melly quickly stopped him. Aren't you going to take this flower with you? The king thought, no way. If he took it back, it might be in the headlines tomorrow. If Melly saw the newspaper, his identity would be revealed. So he said, I'll donate this flower to the farm. Melly exclaimed, that won't work either. If the king finds out I'm growing monster plants on the farm, I'll be in trouble. The king felt a little awkward. Just say you dug it up from the ground, then report it to the Royal Household Agency, and there won't be any problems. But there's one more thing I'd like to ask you. Melly knew what he wanted to say. This is our secret, but for your service, you received a rare flower. The king suddenly sighed. This is a strange place. What was I even doing here? I must have been tempted by the food. I shouldn't come here anymore. No one can resist the food here. 3 uninvited guests arrived at the farm and immediately complained. What kind of crappy farm is this? Why does it stink so bad? Melly, oblivious to the sarcasm, said she was fertilizing and even dragged them over, asking if they wanted to take a sniff. The 2 were so scared they ran off. Katie saw that these 2 good-for-nothings were completely unreliable. So she asked Melly if she had ever made a Lu-Wei dooli. Melly hadn't heard of it, thinking it was some kind of sushi. Seeing that Melly didn't know, Katie asked if she could make it in the next few days. Melly thought she had guessed correctly. Making food was a piece of cake for her. Katie, seeing that Melly had taken the bait, immediately gathered everyone around. Miss Melly will be hosting a Lu-Wei dooli soon. Hearing the word hosting, Melly realized it wasn't sushi. Katie said triumphantly, of course not. Lu-Wei dooli means an afternoon tea party, you country bumpkin. Melly realized she'd been tricked, but now she was more worried that no one would come. How embarrassing that would be. Louise told her not to worry. She said there was a group of high-ranking women in the palace, officials with prestigious positions. Even the king had to show them respect. Melly remembered that a few elegant noble women had indeed visited a few days ago. Louise continued, saying that although they would attend the tea party, they were not only picky eaters, but also expected extravagant things. However, she had great confidence in Melly's cooking. She guaranteed they would be hooked after just one bite. Just then, Lawrence happened to pass by the farm and came in to ask if any help was needed. By this time, Melly had already thought of a theme for the tea party and wanted their opinions. She planned to use golden cream to create different flavor treats, like pies, cookies, mini cakes, croissants, and such. Both of them thought it was a fantastic idea. Not only would it highlight the farm's unique character, but it would also seem very approachable. However, there was no milk on the farm, and high-quality milk in the capital was very expensive. Louise suggested applying for a sponsorship from the kingdom. All she needed was the Grand Duke's daughter's approval. Athena, the Grand Duke's daughter, was also the king's cousin. Ever since a chance encounter with the king in the woods as a child, she had secretly admired him, but the king didn't seem very interested in her. However, the more the king acted this way, the more charming she found him. Unable to look directly at the king's handsome face, Athena turned her head and handed a document to the king. The king opened it. What is this? A budget proposal for an in-palace afternoon tea party. Athena realized she had given him the wrong document. She explained, this Saturday, the farm is hosting an afternoon tea party. I saw no problems with it, so I approved it. The king knew without a doubt that this wasn't Melly's idea. It must have been some other young lady who insisted on it, just to embarrass him. He then dismissed Athena. I messed up and brought the wrong document. Shouldn't the king scold me? When did he become so lenient? After Athena left, the king couldn't focus on his work. An afternoon tea party. Melly's cooking is definitely going to become famous in the palace now. But why am I even thinking about this? Whether she's famous or not has nothing to do with me. To clear his head, the king decided to go archery. But he happened to overhear someone talking about Melly's farm. The king hadn't intended to eavesdrop, but suddenly a third person said, that so-called afternoon tea party will absolutely not go ahead as planned. The king realized there was a conspiracy afoot. He wanted to see who had just spoken. By the time he rounded the bushes, the speaker was long gone, so he waited quietly until the palace staff left for the day, hoping to find out who was behind the tea party. The person he asked thought the king was targeting Melly and advised him to stop, saying it would only damage his majesty's reputation. Fearing being discovered, the king left. But he was still curious about what method they would use to sabotage the tea party. Someone else passing by overheard this. They mistakenly thought it was the king who wanted to ruin the party. But this person didn't care what the king thought. He took a bag of gold coins and gave it to the beautiful woman, making Melly very happy. It was a huge sum of 10 gold coins. He said it was the royal gold, and she could use it all for the tea party. Melly was very excited and wanted to invite him to the party, but he said he wasn't sure. Melly sighed, thinking that those in high positions were indeed picky and unpredictable. Over the next few days, Melly not only had to take care of the crops on the farm, but also prepare tea and snacks for about 30 people. It wasn't an easy task for her alone, but luckily, she had a group of like-minded friends. Lawrence helped her design the invitations, and Louise helped her with the milk. Character name missing/unclear from provided context helped her set up the preparation area and storage room. Finally, Katie helped Melly find a taste tester. Katie said her father was a very famous pastry chef, a household name in their area. Melly brought out all the food that needed to be tasted. The taste tester ate a raspberry pastry and said he needed to try it again. After 4 or 5 plates, he still couldn't say what he thought. This made Louise lose her patience. How much more are you going to eat? Moore/Moss said, of course, the more the better. It's really delicious. Katie stood to the side with an I knew this would happen expression. Seeing this, Melly knew her recipes were a great success. Now it was time to start mass production. After a busy day, Melly finally finished all the preparations. She stretched and collapsed on her bed, waiting for everyone to come to the tea party the next day. However, someone didn't want things to go so smoothly for her. On the other side, the king stood on the balcony, gazing at the cottage on the farm. Although the preparations had gone well over the past few days, he had a bad feeling. Suddenly, he remembered something. He recalled hearing the Minister of the Interior say that afternoon that some noble ladies were going to pray all night at the Grand Temple. He guessed that the sabotage wouldn't be tomorrow, but tonight. He disguised himself and went to the Grand Temple, just as he suspected. Meanwhile, Katie and 2 others arrived at the farm where the food was laid out. Without a word, Katie picked up a plate of bread and was about to throw it on the ground. But she turned and saw a shocking sight. She angrily asked, "What are you doing?" One of the others said, "I'm just smelling it." Katie retorted, "Bullshit. I saw you. Open your mouth. It's just that this bread smells so damn good." The other person also started to scold Little White. "Are you really going to eat these? These disgusting, fattening breads? But the bread baked on the farm is really good. Look at this bread. I don't know what kind of milk they used, but it looks like it would melt in your mouth. If it's made with rich cream frosting, it must taste amazing." Both of them were mesmerized. Little White said again, "Do you think that if we throw all this bread on the floor, the tea party tomorrow will be canceled?" "Of course," replied the other. At this point, Little Pink also smelled the enticing aroma of the cream. "The farm owner will probably find a way to fix this. So we should eat all this bread." Katie thought they must have lost their minds. Seeing that they were about to start eating, she angrily asked, "Aren't you afraid you'll regret this later?" The 2 ignored her and started stuffing the bread into their mouths. They cried as they ate, "It's so delicious. I haven't tasted fresh cream in so long. I only get to eat a little bit of vegetables every day, too. Katie looked at the pastries. Both of them thought they must be crazy. Her mother had taught her from a young age that she must pay attention to her figure. A woman must always maintain her beauty. She desperately told herself not to eat, absolutely not to eat. Soon, the gluttonous duo had swept away all the bread. Katie glanced at them. Those two were incredible. Their corsets were so stretched they couldn't even fasten them. You'll regret this sooner or later. Just then, a voice came from behind them. What are you doing? The three turned to see the man. At this moment, Melly also heard the voice and woke up. Character name missing/unclear from provided context made up a far-fetched excuse, saying her pet boar had suddenly run out. And then it ran into that shed and knocked over everything inside. The butler will come tomorrow to compensate you for your losses. Having said that, she ran off like a wisp of smoke. Melly still didn't know what had happened. It wasn't until the king told her that she realized all the desserts she had prepared had been eaten. That was enough for 30 people. It was quite a feat to finish it all in one go. Fortunately, there was still a plate of butter cookies left. The king was a little worried. He wasn't worried about Melly's tea party tomorrow, but about his own reputation. Because he and Melly already had a conflict, if everyone found out about this, it would definitely be blamed on him. Then, his good name would be ruined. Just thinking about it was terrifying. But Melly thought, so what if the desserts were eaten? As long as they weren't thrown on the ground and wasted, it was fine. Otherwise, she would have gotten on her horse and chased after them, dragging them back to the farm. Being able to eat all the desserts meant her cooking was excellent. The only regret was not seeing them eat it with her own eyes. But what about tomorrow's afternoon tea party? Since they did this to sabotage the tea party, she couldn't admit defeat. A comeback against the odds would be the most stylish revenge. Soon, Melly had a new plan. The king also expressed his willingness to help her find new ingredients. Melly asked him to help her find about 30 bottles of wine. Saying this, Melly was about to give the king money for the bottles. The king left the sentence, "Don't worry about it," and disappeared with a whoosh. Melly wondered just how much money he had. He didn't even want the money. The king couldn't be bothered to explain to the guards. He hopped on his pony and jumped over the wall. Holding up the royal insignia, he went door to door buying bottles. After running to 7 or 8 houses, he almost had enough. It had been a long time since he'd done this kind of physical work. He was now hot, tired, and cold. At this time, if he could have a bite of warm food, it would be wonderful. Returning to the farm and pushing open the door, his eyes suddenly lit up. Melly said, "You came back just in time. I just finished making dinner." The king wondered if she could read minds. He immediately went to wash his hands. Just as he sat down, Melly brought out a plate of bread. The king picked up a piece of bread, dipped in the stew for 3 seconds, and then took a bite. How could there be such delicious food? The taste was neither salty nor sweet. Just right. All the fatigue of the day vanished in an instant. Suddenly, the king noticed Melly had changed her clothes. Was she preparing for tomorrow's tea party? The king was very curious about what she was planning to do. The next day, the king was working when he suddenly heard people talking about the tea party outside. He lost interest in his work, abandoned his 2 ministers, and ran out. After changing clothes, she quietly arrived at the farm. Meanwhile, Melly, seeing the tea party atmosphere was about right, swiftly unveiled the white cloth from the table. She asked everyone to come and take a bottle. Seeing this, everyone was suddenly filled with craving. "We're here to be served. You actually want me to personally handle these glass bottles. Don't tell me these are today's desserts." The king hadn't expected her to just bring out the bottles like this. At this rate, the tea party was sure to become a mess. As expected, Athena immediately stepped forward. "I am the Grand Duchess's chief attendant. You're actually asking me to pour water for myself at an afternoon tea party. I've never experienced such a thing." Everyone began to murmur amongst themselves. Melly became slightly nervous. If the Grand Duchess said she was thirsty, you would surely pour water for her yourself, wouldn't you? How can this be the same? Where is the difference? Athena intended to teach Melly a lesson. For us, being able to personally serve esteemed individuals is not labor, but a privilege. Even for the Grand Duchess's daughter, Athena, if she were to meet the Queen Mother, she would also set aside everyone else and personally attend to her. Melly asked, "Then you must have been very happy in that moment." Athena affirmed, "Of course. I'm even more curious. Everyone clearly understands that. So why, when faced with the most precious person in the world, do you do nothing?" Athena said, "Of course we also take care of our husbands and children." Melly replied, "I'm not talking about them. The most precious person in this world is, of course, ourselves. Each of you is a remarkable person. Not only do you support the royal family in the palace, but you also return home to busy yourselves caring for your families. But every time you personally do something, it's to serve others, never for yourselves. When I was very young, the first time I entered a farm, I felt a sense of mystery and happiness. I always dreamed of one day owning my own farm, and then, just like Aunt Martha, filling everyone who came to the farm with happiness. So I named the farm Marlona, symbolizing Belmont. So, everyone, are you willing to brew a genuine batch of rural dandelion wine on this farm today as a gift to the most precious person in the world, yourselves? The king had attended all sorts of parties before, but he found them all unremarkable and unexciting. He had originally planned today to, regardless of how delicious or impressive Melly's desserts were, or how much atmosphere there was, his assessment would be just ordinary, until Melly's words, "Personally make a gift for yourself," which surprised him greatly. Melly was right. Although he would use his own hands for others, he had never done anything for himself. And this time, it was a gift for himself. Everyone eagerly wanted to participate. Melly happily brought out paper, boxes, and pens, asking everyone to write their names. And then, in groups of 5, she began to teach them how to make wine. First, prepare a wooden box and spread a cloth over it. Then place the picked flowers inside and wash them clean. Wring them out firmly to remove the water. Next, use hot water to dissolve the sugar and pour it over the flower petals. Now you need to scoop out the flesh of the lemon and orange and mix it with the flower petal water. Finally, add the red wine yeast. If you like raisins, you can add some of those too. Then use a funnel to pour into the bottles, and it's done. Dandelion wine needs to sit for 6 weeks before it can be drunk. Not only does it taste good, but it's also good for the heart and digestive system. And 6 weeks from now will be summer. It will be wonderful chilled and then drunk. With a clang, Melly brought out a large wooden barrel from somewhere and invited everyone to try the fruit and mint tea and butter cookies. Everyone took a piece and put in their mouths. Their eyes lit up instantly. It's so delicious. In the blink of an eye, the tea party came to an end. Everyone lamented how quickly the time had passed. They all bid farewell to Melly. Lawrence, shortly after leaving, was stopped and asked if he was still as bored as before. Lawrence clutched the wine bottle in his hand. No, this was the best party I've ever been to. The king thought everything would smoothly conclude. Suddenly, someone shouted, "He's hiding over there." The king turned around and realized they weren't talking about him. It was Katie and her 2 friends hiding nearby, discovered by Morse. The king thought they mustn't get away with this. He was about to move closer to eavesdrop on their conversation, when suddenly an old man emerged from the bushes. "Just as I thought, Your Majesty." Another old man in a tree said, "I didn't expect you to be hiding here, and even in disguise." The king cursed under his breath. "Damn it, now I'll miss the show." After Melly caught Katie and her 2 friends, she loudly questioned them. "Do you know what a shameful thing you've done?" Little Pink, crying, admitted, "I ate a lot of your food like a pig. I'm definitely going to get fat." Melly replied, "That's not the point. Your mistake was entering without the owner's permission and secretly eating all the food. Food shouldn't be eaten that way. You should talk to the host about the food and then eat it leisurely and happily. You can even comment on how it tastes." Katie didn't want to waste time with Melly. "I'll have my butler compensate you for the damages." Melly puffed out her cheeks. "Compensation. That took me 2 days to make, personally cranking that enormous mixer. Its value simply can't be measured with money, but you can compensate with labor." They disagreed. Melly declared, "I'm the owner of this farm. I have absolute authority here. The Minister of the Interior himself told me that. So, from the moment you stepped onto this farm, you should have behaved yourselves." Katie still thought this was excessive. Morse couldn't stand it anymore. "Should I make this public? Or does Melly want to handle this herself?" He warned them not to resort to violence. Hearing the word violence, the trio immediately became much more compliant. Melly instructed Little Pink to fill the tub with water. Little Pink tried to pretend she couldn't lift it, but when she actually tried, she found she was surprisingly steady. Melly cheered her on from behind. Katie, worried about being recognized, wanted to finish the work and leave quickly. Little White, however, seemed quite happy. Many nobles consider gardening a hobby. As dusk approached, the trio finally finished all the farm work. Melly brought them food. Little White and Little Pink practically drooled. Melly said, this is to thank you. I prepared this especially. Thanks to you, today's afternoon tea party was a success. Katie tried to stop them, but it was too late. The two were already devouring the food. Little White exclaimed, "This is amazing. The bread is so soft and delicious. And the tomatoes, they have a dreamy, earthy flavor. Paired with the scrambled eggs, the texture is just right. And what is this lettuce? Just like this in the bread, one bite that it's so good. It's the taste of health." That day, Lambert found Melly. He came to invite her to participate in a cooking competition because so far, the farm hadn't generated any other income. To gain a foothold in the palace, Melly needed to secure income from other sources. Coincidentally, the first place prize for the cooking competition was a gold ring. Hearing gold ring, Melly immediately became excited. She whispered, "Is it pure gold?" Lambert smiled and said, "Guaranteed 99.9% pure gold." Hearing this, Melly was overjoyed. Lambert told her to go find a maid today to sign up. Melly quickly thanked him. After explaining everything, Lambert was about to leave when Melly suddenly called out, "Wait." Melly really wanted to ask about Valentine, but he always told her to keep things confidential. She hadn't even had a chance to thank him properly for last time. Suddenly, she remembered something. Maybe she could see him at the palace today. Later that afternoon, at the palace, the king was receiving various visitors as usual. Passing by a window, he glanced casually outside. His eyes widened immediately, and he froze in place. The attendant following him was puzzled. Why had he stopped? Was there someone across the way? He turned back, but the king was already gone. The attendant was frantic. He'd been told to keep a close eye on His Majesty. By this time, the king had run to the next building and was hiding around a corner, secretly observing a beautiful woman. What's she doing at the palace instead of staying at the farm? The king muttered to himself, just loud enough for the head steward behind him to hear. The head steward was very angry. He'd heard the king muttering to himself last time about ruining someone's tea party. He hadn't interfered then, but to encounter this again was simply unbearable. He loudly informed the king, "Entering and leaving the palace offices freely is their right." The king was stunned for 3 seconds, trying to understand what he meant. He quickly figured it out. "I was just curious. That's why I was talking to myself." Melly was chatting with someone when she suddenly heard Valentine's voice. She headed towards where the king was, but rounding the corner, she only saw the head steward. Melly asked, "Where did the knight who was just here go?" The head steward pretended ignorance. "What knight? There wasn't a knight here." Hiding in the next room, the king thought, "How are this girl's ears so sharp? Could she have been a rabbit in a past life?" The head steward asked if anyone was bothering her. "If so, I'll teach them a lesson." Melly said it was nothing. "Excuse me." Then she bid the head steward farewell. Hidden in the room, the king breathed a sigh of relief. He wanted to know why Melly had suddenly come to the palace, so he secretly followed her. Melly arrived at the cooking competition registration and found everyone had already arrived and formed a line. Then Duchess Winter arrived and everyone bowed to her. Melly also curtsied in a proper manner. Winter flipped through everyone's applications. Melly's stated purpose for applying was the gold ring. "You're certainly honest," Winter remarked. Melly said she didn't have time to think of another reason. Winter chuckled. "You're truly unique. It's just a formality anyway. However, this competition is a side event of the ball, so His Majesty will be attending the ball as well." Melly hadn't expected him to be there. Not only had she taken his land, but she'd done so impeccably. It would be awkward to run into the king at the ball. What if he confronted her? But she hadn't done anything wrong. She couldn't give up the ring because of this. Winter said, "His Majesty won't stay at the ball for long, nor will he pay attention to what's happening in the corners. I simply hope you'll fulfill your duties as a participant admirably. That's why I asked. Just in case, I must also ask, you do have a gown, don't you?" "A gown? Does one need a gown to cook?" Winter explained that a gown was required for this event. "It's silly, I know, but that's how high society operates. No one will listen to you at the ball without a gown." This was a blow to Melly. She was trying to earn money because she didn't have any, and now she had to spend a fortune. Seeing her frankness, Winter spoke directly. "Without a gown, it's impossible to make any money in social circles. Take this opportunity to steel yourself and prepare one. If you're unsure, ask friends familiar with gowns to help you choose." Melly felt disheartened. She simply didn't have the money to buy a gown. What was she supposed to do? Lost in thought, she walked back. Suddenly, a tall figure appeared in front of her, blocking her path. Startled, Melly only recognized the person as Valentine when he spoke. Melly was instantly overjoyed. "That's wonderful. I thought I was hearing things. You wouldn't believe it. My afternoon tea party was a huge success. The king, secretly observing to avoid being discovered, pretended to know nothing. Melly said, "Thanks to your wine bottle, I made something really special." The king feigned ignorance. "Something strong enough to be bottled. Is it some kind of gummy?" Melly chuckled. "It's dandelion wine. If you'd like to try some, I'll bring a chilled bottle next time. We'll be seeing each other at the palace soon anyway." This made the king's eyes widen. Had he been discovered? He quickly asked why. Melly quietly asked, "Valentine, do you have a gown?" The king didn't understand what she meant. Melly explained, "I'm not talking about an expensive gown, like one that costs as much as a carriage. I wouldn't even dream of it. But Valentine, you come from a wealthy family, so I thought maybe in your family's storage there might be a lot of those, grandmother's hand-me-downs. If there are, I'd like to borrow one. I can pay you, of course." Seeing the king remain silent, Melly thought he was simply captivated by her beauty. However, the king said, "His grandmother's gowns are in a museum." Melly then realized he had been trying to help her. He continued, "There are two kinds of people in this world. One kind hears someone's troubles, preys on their weakness, and looks down on them. And then there's the other kind, that who listen to others and try to help them find solutions. I'm certain Valentine is the latter. I've been wanting to thank you for helping me find the glass that night." Suddenly feeling self-conscious after saying so much, Melly felt like a fool. But she felt that Valentine was a good person. He wouldn't ignore someone's troubles, and he enjoys everything I make for him, no matter what it is. I wish he could visit the farm more often. At this point, the king understood the situation. She didn't want to wear his grandmother's gown. She simply couldn't afford one. She worked so hard, yet she couldn't even buy a gown. Should he take the great Empress Dowager's gown from the museum and give it to her to wear? The king shook his head vigorously. What was he even thinking? Do you need the gown for the ball? Receiving Melly's confirmation, the king began to think again. He was the central figure of the ball. Even if Melly was oblivious, she would eventually see his face and realize Valentine's true identity. But he didn't want that to happen. Seeing him racking his brains, Melly offered him some freshly picked cherries, hoping to help him think. When she looked up again, the king had vanished. It was his loss that he missed out on such delicious cherries. Back at the palace, the king immediately sought out the officials planning the ball. They assumed he was there to cancel the event again. Resolutely, they declared, "Even if you arrest us, you can't stop this ball." The king said, "I just have a suggestion." "No suggestions allowed." The king exasperatedly replied, "Will you let me finish? The ball is fine, but it needs to be a masquerade ball." The three of them were momentarily stunned. Before leaving, the king emphasized again that it must be a masquerade ball, otherwise, they would be the ones hosting it themselves. After the king left, the three began to discuss. This was the first time His Majesty had given suggestions for the ball. They hadn't expected him to have such preferences. But why is His Majesty suddenly interested in the ball? Isn't it obvious? It must be because of a woman. He has a woman he likes, and it's the first time in 22 years. Meanwhile, Melly was wondering what Valentine was doing at that moment. Next time, I must treat him to cherry pie. I hope he comes to visit the farm soon. At that moment, the king was troubled by his leaf. He couldn't understand why he was troubled by such a question. Her leaf is none of my business. He resolved to stop thinking about it. But as soon as he turned around, he recalled that sweet smile and those bright emerald eyes. And then he unconsciously thought of her leaf again. The king was nearly tormented to madness. More importantly, he didn't understand those things. Whether it was materials, design, or popular styles, they were all blind spots for him. Suddenly, he thought of someone, Louis. The next day, he pretended to run into Louis. He told him, "You don't have to work overtime tomorrow afternoon." Louis thought he had misheard. He confirmed it with the person next to him several times before believing it. This isn't like him. He must be up to something. Forget it. I can go to the farm to see Melly tomorrow. Meanwhile, Melly was agonizing over the menu for the cooking competition. She didn't know if what she made would suit their tastes. The budget for fancy dishes was simply too high. Suddenly, she heard something in the grass nearby. Looking down, she saw two heads pop up. Melly was terrified. She thought she was seeing ghosts in broad daylight. The two old men cried out, "Help, we're starving." Melly dragged them to a shady spot. Then she picked some cherries for them, but they still said they were hungry. Melly could only give them her basket of vegetables. The two old men seemed ravenous, scrambling towards the basket. Judging by their appearance, they seemed to be nobles. She wondered why they had fainted in the grass. One old man took out a handful of beans from the basket. He tasted a few and found them quite delicious. The other anxiously said, "Let me try some too." After eating, he found them truly delicious. The more they chewed, the more they wanted, one after another, completely unable to stop. Melly thought, are they really that good? Aren't these just the most common beans from a market? Suddenly, Melly understood. Nobles were used to delicacies, so they would find fresh, rustic country flavors more novel. She just had to prepare the menu with this idea in mind. After saying a word to the two old men, Melly left impatiently. The two old men didn't even have time to ask her name. Soon after, they agreed that Melly must be the earth goddess, transformed into a country girl to save them. They were incredibly moved. After returning to the farm, Melly quickly wrote the menu for the cooking competition. To reward herself, she decided to make a giant cherry pie. The basic ingredients were already prepared. She just needed to add the cherry filling. Then she shaped it and baked it. Soon, a cherry pie was ready. Looking at the fruits of her labor, Melly was instantly overwhelmed with happiness. The next day, Melly delivered the menu to the palace. Afraid of being asked about the dress, she dropped off the menu and immediately ran out. On the way back, she was still thinking about finishing her work for the day and then eating the cherry pie. Suddenly, she stopped. Melly thought she heard footsteps. Someone was following her. She could even feel their gaze. This was definitely not a coincidence. The feeling was too real. Could it be because of the cooking competition? If so, then she had to consider more than just the dishes. This time, she absolutely wouldn't let her food be ruined again. Meanwhile, Lewis went straight to the farm after work. He called out Melly's name several times, but received no response. Looking through the window, he saw that she wasn't home. Then he noticed a large bucket beneath the window. Inside the bucket was a strange flower. Looking closer, he realized it had been grown with growth magic. It wasn't like hickories or chians. Could it be Valentine's? No, it was more like, just as he was about to recall the person's name, a wave of drowsiness washed over him. His eyelids grew heavy. The next second, he collapsed beside the bucket with a thud. Meanwhile, Melly searched back and forth several times, but couldn't find the person who had been following her. She decided to head back to the farm. Arriving at the gate, she found it ajar, giving her a very bad feeling. Could it be the person who was following her? As a precaution, she grabbed a nearby shovel and hid around the corner of the house. Mentally counting to 3, she dashed out. But it was just Lewis. Worried that he had been knocked unconscious by an intruder, Melly dropped the shovel and ran towards him. After turning him over, Melly wondered why she kept finding Lewis unconscious. After he woke up, Melly asked, "Don't you have work today?" Lewis wiped his mouth. "How did I fall asleep?" "It must be because of this lotus flower. It has a calming effect, relieving tension and promoting peace of mind." Lewis vaguely remembered something important he had been thinking about before falling asleep. But now his memory was fuzzy. He couldn't remember why he had fallen asleep at such a crucial moment. Melly said, "It's a pure lotus. The effect shouldn't be this strong. Maybe you're just too tired lately." Lewis said, "You're right, I am exhausted. But that's not the point. The point is I got off work early. It was the king's order." Melly was suspicious. The king being so kind. He must have some dangerous plan up his sleeve today. Our esteemed king has been too quiet lately. It's making me uneasy. But even if the sky falls, that nothing can stop my determination to farm. Lewis reassured her, "Don't worry. If there's any trouble with the king, I'll let you know immediately. Besides, he's been preoccupied with the ball lately." Melly sighed, as expected of Lewis. So reliable. She walked towards the cherry tomatoes with pruning shears. Lewis followed, wanting to help. Melly snipped a tomato vine. Lewis, not understanding, thought she was taking out her frustration on the tomatoes. Melly explained this is called pruning. Lewis, curious, was eager to learn. Melly patiently explained, because the soil is so rich, the tomatoes are growing very well. Well, that's good. That if the nutrients are too dispersed, they won't develop the best flavor. So, we need to prune the branches early on. Hearing Melly's explanation, Lewis said, "I understand. It's like what his does." Melly hadn't heard that name before. Lewis smiled. "That's the king. A long time ago, because the former king was a playboy, easily swayed by other women. But there was a time when he greatly disliked the queen and is. He even tormented them relentlessly. And Her Majesty suffered quite a bit. So, is vowed from a young age to only care for his future queen. That's why he's unwavering when faced with other ladies. In formal settings, he's only ever seen with Athena, the Grand Duke's daughter. The Minister of the Interior is practically tearing his hair out over it. Melly said he should at least try dating someone he likes for a while. At least then he'd know if they're a good person or not. The way I see it, he's completely shut himself off emotionally. After finishing his work, Louis lay down on the lawn, enjoying the gentle breeze. It was quite pleasant. He even wondered if he should start his own farm. After all, Melly had just complimented his natural farming talent. Just then, Melly called his name from the window. Louis assumed there was more fertilizing to do. Melly said, "We're done for the day. I just wanted to ask you to come inside. I baked a cherry pie a little while ago." At the mention of food, Louis's eyes lit up. Melly said, "I was just worrying about not being able to finish it all by myself. It's perfect timing that you're here." Louis cut off a small piece and swallowed it whole. That's the stuff. Crushed, buttery biscuits spread with rich, homemade cream from the farm. And finally, topped with sweet cherries. One slice, made with such high-quality cherries. And then you pop it in your mouth. With every bite, the sun-ripened cherries burst with flavor. It's impossible to stop. Louis brought over a large bowl. There's more cream and cherries here. It's a shame they've cooled down a bit, but there wasn't any more room on the pie. Speaking of which, Louis also noticed the kitchen was missing a freezer. Melly looked a little disheartened. She couldn't afford a freezer right now. Cumber was right. The farm needed funds. That reminded her of something. "Sir Louis, do you have a grandmother?" Louis swallowed the food in his mouth. "Yes, the previous generation's vampire lord." Melly brightened. "Does your grandmother have a lot of dresses?" "No. Due to her personal preferences, she only has the black dress she usually wears." Melly's face fell slightly. "Why are you suddenly interested in my grandmother's dresses?" Melly explained that she was trying to raise funds for the farm and had decided to enter the cooking competition at the ball. But a dress was required to enter, and she couldn't afford a new one. So the Duchess had suggested she ask a close friend for help. At the word friend, Louis blushed slightly. Before Melly could continue, he shot to his feet. "A dress. You've come to the right person." Melly said, "If I wore your dress, I'd probably look like I was wearing a sack. Come home with me first. Consider it a thank you for the cherry pie. Leave his problem to me." Melly dressed and waited at the door for Louis, who needed to send a message home first. But he returned with Sigrid. Melly hadn't expected her to come along. Sigrid said she had run into Louis on the road, and he had invited her to join them. She also claimed to know a lot about dresses. Louis, standing beside her, grumbled, "You practically begged to come along." Melly was delighted and thanked Louis again. Then, the three of them set off towards Louis's home. The old butler was practically in tears. Usually, it was either the night captain or some drunken subordinate. But this time, it was finally a woman. The old butler felt he could die happy. Melly had never seen such a grand and magnificent building before, but she couldn't help but wonder how they cleaned those high windows. They then proceeded to the dressing room. High heels of every color, countless sparkling jewels, and a seemingly endless array of gorgeous dresses. Melly was momentarily speechless. Louis told her to choose whatever she liked and not to be polite. Melly looked around and noticed there were dresses in every size. Louis said it was her hobby. Whenever she saw a beautiful dress, she bought it, always ready to give it away. Suddenly, Melly noticed there were even children's sizes, but she planned to give them to the daughters or nieces of acquaintances or even to puppies. No wonder they were so small and cute. Are all of these meant to be gifts? This question startled Louis. Had her extravagance disappointed Melly? Melly quickly waved her hands. "How could I be disappointed? I think as long as you're happy, that's all that matters. Weren't you happy when you picked out these dresses?" Louis was touched by her words. "Then pick out a few. You don't have to return them. To be honest, I haven't given any of these dresses away. If you're willing to take them, I'll be very, very happy." Melly's favorite thing to do was help others. She smiled and agreed. Louis urged Melly to try some on to see if they fit. As soon as she finished speaking, 3 maids appeared. Melly was about to say she could manage on her own, but the maids insisted that putting on a dress was complicated and she couldn't do it by herself. "Leave your hair to us as well." Soon, Melly had changed. One dress was pink, the other yellow. Feeling a little different in a dress for the first time, Louis was much more excited than Melly. "That yellow one suits you perfectly." Sigrid, standing nearby, nodded in agreement. "Because your hair is dark green, it looks absolutely stunning with the cute yellow tulle dress and its bow. Since your skin is so fair, this teal silk one would also look great on you." Melly looked at the dress in her hand. "This one seems more suited to you." The 3 maids behind her stepped forward again. Louis was quickly dressed. "Does it look good?" she asked. Looking at Louis, who was a foot taller than her, Melly was envious. "This is amazing." Hand in hand, they went to try on more dresses. Sigrid smiled warmly at the scene. This was the first time Lewis had made a female friend. She had been worried Lewis would mess it up, but it seemed she had worried for nothing. She exchanged a smile with the old butler, who closed his eyes contentedly. The old butler brought another book about the evening gowns. It described the attire worn by nobles at balls. Although it was old information, it wasn't too outdated and should be helpful to Melly. Melly opened the book. The gown on the first page was dazzling. Lewis said it was the Empress Dowager's gown, but you won't see her at the ball. She suffered a lot when she was young and can no longer attend such events. If there's a chance, I'll arrange for you to meet her without the emperor knowing. She'll absolutely adore you. Lewis's words were filled with affection and respect for the Empress Dowager. It seems Her Majesty the Empress Dowager is a kind and righteous person. Melly continued to flip through the pages. The next outfit was the uniform worn by the emperor in disguise. Lewis explained, "This is the Royal Knight's uniform, but it's an old design. Seeing this reminds me of Mr. Randolph. He was an excellent knight and a confidant of the Empress Dowager." Melly was shocked. He served the Empress Dowager. She then asked, "Aren't all the knights in this book directly under the emperor's command?" Sigrid said, "Not all of them. Mr. Randolph served Her Majesty the Empress Dowager." Melly then realized that not all of them were under the emperor's command. Come to think of it, Mr. Valentine never said he was under the emperor's command either. When I first met him at the farm, he didn't answer me. I just assumed, and I've been convinced of it ever since. Could I have been completely wrong? But what is Valentine's true identity? A short while later, Lewis changed into a dress printed with a philosopher's pattern. Melly, meanwhile, was dressed like a donut. Lewis even found a matching cake hat for her. The two were happily trying on clothes when the butler entered. "Miss, it's getting late. Shall I prepare your bed?" Melly replied, "No, thank you. I'll be returning to the farm now." Suddenly, she remembered the gowns. Having tried on so many, she couldn't decide which one to choose. This cursed indecisiveness. She recalled the yellow gown with the bow that Lewis had mentioned. That was the one. At dusk, the emperor sat on the balcony, reading. He glanced at the neighboring farm. Melly was walking home, laden with packages. It seemed his gown problem was solved. Putting the right person in the right place solved the problem. He couldn't help but applaud his own ingenuity. Now he could finally relax. Wait, why did he feel at ease? Right? At the ball, Melly would be busy with the cooking competition. Then she wouldn't have time to pay attention to the masked emperor. He had made thorough preparations to avoid being recognized. The emperor thought he had no more worries. But the next day, he ran into a chick on the road. The same chick he had covered the mouth of on his first visit to the farm. The emperor had a headache. Why did he always run into such frustrating situations? How did Melly manage her farm? How could a chick even escape? A few minutes earlier, the chick had run out onto the main road and been startled by the patrolling cavalry. Seeing the emperor, it acted as if it knew him. It jumped right onto him, looking at the little creature in his hands. The emperor softened. He put it in his pocket, planning to return it to the farm later. Once this little guy's problem was solved, there shouldn't be any new problems, right? The emperor diligently finished all his official duties, then changed his clothes and disguised himself as Valentine. He carried the chick and headed towards a neighboring farm. He compared the chick to the gaps in the fence. It was clearly larger than the gaps. How to get out? To prevent the chick from escaping again, the emperor decided to put it inside the house before leaving. But as he pushed open the door, he immediately smelled a pungent, dangerous odor. It was the same smell he had smelled as a child. A pungent smell, a viscous red, and a pool of obscured liquid on the floor. The emperor looked at the dining table. Several sheets of paper were scattered haphazardly on it. This place had clearly been invaded. He picked up the top sheet. It was a submission application for the cooking competition menu. Could it be that someone was trying to prevent Melly from participating? The next sheet listed the required ingredients. After reading it, the emperor's eyes widened. Just then, Melly appeared behind the emperor, holding a shovel. The emperor turned and, seeing the shovel in her hand, yelled, "Calm down." Melly smiled. "I'm just using it for self-defense." She suddenly noticed the paper in the emperor's hand. The emperor quickly said, "I didn't mean to peek. I came to return your chick. This little guy must have run out while someone was breaking in." Melly had already guessed as much. She had anticipated an intrusion, but not the chick's escape. What did the paper look like originally? The emperor asked. "Nothing special," he replied. "It was just under the other papers, easily visible. There was nothing else between the sheets." Suddenly, the emperor understood. It was a trap set by Melly. Melly said she's felt like someone's been following her lately, but she doesn't know who it is. It makes her think about the cooking competition. But if they wanted to steal information about the competition, they should go to the organizers, the Emperor reasoned. It must be because the Duchess is guarding things too closely that they can't get their hands on anything. That's why I left the fake menu on the table. I was wondering why sardine pie was on the menu. When I saw the menu earlier, I thought you'd lost your mind. Melly hadn't expected him to know about that dish. Only people who live in remote villages by the sea would eat sardine pie. The Emperor said he'd been to many places and eaten all sorts of food. But sardine pie is the strangest of them all. Melly laughed. A pie crust made from sardine heads looks incredibly ferocious. Plus, the fishy smell mixed with the glutinous flour means that if you take even one bite, the fishy taste lingers in your mouth for hours. The Emperor nodded repeatedly. If you accidentally eat it, you have to close the windows immediately. Otherwise, the smell carried by the wind would suffocate. Beautiful. I'm also planning to sprinkle fresh parsley on top of the sardine pie base to make it even more terrifying. The Emperor didn't understand. Isn't the sardine pie a fake menu? Why go into so much detail? Melly said, of course it's to catch the culprit. I plan to go in early on the day of the competition and secretly put out this sardine pie. The noble ladies definitely won't go near this horrible fishy dish, except for the culprit. Now that they know I'm making sardine pie, they'll definitely try to ruin my dish at the competition. It's safer to make it detailed. Suddenly, Melly remembered her gown. The Emperor felt smug. After all, he had arranged for someone to help her choose it. It must be a beautiful gown. Of course it is. It was a gift from Louis, the most skilled gown collector in the palace. And Mr. Sigrid, the gown expert, helped me choose it. Hearing Sigrid's name gave the Emperor a bad feeling. Isn't that guy a bear expert? When did he become a gown expert? The Emperor decided it was best to see Melly's gown. Feigning casualness, Melly took out the yellow gown. So what do you think? Just looking at it, you can feel the aura of victory, right? I think it's super cool. The Emperor felt dizzy. What the heck is this performance costume? Am I seeing things? No, I have to look again. It still looks strange. Not to mention the smooth, shiny surface. What's with the giant strap? What was Louis doing? Why didn't he stop her? Seeing his reaction, Melly sensed something was wrong. Doesn't she think this gown is cool? The Emperor asked, did Louis pick this out for you? Melly said, I picked it myself. Since I rarely participate in such a big competition, I wanted to borrow Louis's aura, so I chose the color and material he recommended. And to intimidate my opponents, I also chose the high shoulder design and the strap that symbolizes victory. After hearing Melly's words, the Emperor had another headache. The three of them must have been distracted when choosing the gown. In fact, that was exactly the case. Melly had been wondering who Mr. Valentine was. Louis had been thinking, Donut Melly is so cute. Sigrid had been thinking, I have to keep an eye on Louis and not let him lose his #1 apricot friend because of something stupid. The Emperor sighed. I don't know much about gowns, but I at least know that if you wear this to the competition, you'll be laughed at. If Louis sees people pointing at you, he'll be heartbroken too. Melly was dejected. The gown became wrinkled. The Emperor suggested they smooth out the gown. You hold the shoulder part, and I'll count to 3. We'll pull it back together. 1, 2, 3. Rip! The gown was torn in half. The Emperor was dumbfounded. Isn't that how you get wrinkles out of blankets? Melly didn't think there was anything wrong with this method. But what to do now? The Emperor thought the best solution was to buy a new one. But the competition was only a few days away. To buy a dress now, he'd have to use his imperial status. Shops that sell dresses of this caliber are frequented by noble women. There are also hubs for gossip. If any rumors reached Melly that she would find out his true identity as the Emperor, then he wouldn't be able to come here anymore. So the Emperor came up with a less than ideal solution. Have Melly alter the dress herself. Melly could alter other clothes, but this was her first time even seeing a dress, let alone wearing one. You've probably seen more dresses than I have, she said, putting the pressure squarely on the Emperor. He had indeed seen quite a few dresses. Just this morning, he'd seen 27 women wearing them. Let me think about what they looked like below the neck, he mused. First, get rid of those ridiculous wrinkled decorations. They don't have dresses like that in the palace. Actually, altering a dress isn't that hard. It's just deduction and imitation. Melly seemed to understand. She brought out her sewing kit. The Emperor was all talk and no action. The dress was soon altered. The emperor was quite satisfied. It was passable at least. This fabric is already high quality. After the alterations, it doesn't look loose at all. It looks more like the original design. But Sir Louis will definitely notice that the dress has been altered, won't he? Don't worry about that. Since Louis chose this dress for you, who knows what he was thinking at the time? So he definitely won't remember what the dress looked like. He'll absolutely believe this is his dress and brag about it everywhere. That way, even if Sigrid knows the dress isn't the same, she won't say anything. Melly hoped that would be the case. But for what Mr. Valentine had said, it seemed like the three of them were quite close. Melly suddenly said, "Isn't it almost time for you to suddenly disappear?" The emperor said, "Yes, it's almost time for you to convince me to stay for dinner." Melly replied, "I'm not making dinner today." The emperor was startled. "You're not making dinner? Then what will I eat?" Melly said, "Since the dress issue is resolved, that I need to prepare for the next step. I need to practice the dishes for the competition. What's wrong with me? Mr. Valentine's already gone. Why am I still talking to myself? If only there was a noble who could taste test for me." Well, the emperor coughed. "I'm still here." Melly immediately offered him a plate. "Try this bread first." The emperor involuntarily sat down. Looking at the bread on the plate, the emperor took a bite. As delicious as ever. He noticed Melly preparing chicken. "Are you making a chicken dish this time?" "That's right. I'll roast the chicken the traditional way until it's beautiful." The emperor was already anticipating dinner. All the ingredients for the chicken dish were ready. Melly rolled up her sleeves and got to work. First, trim the wingtips and the tail, removing the excess fat. After washing the chicken, I'll rub it with a mixture of herb powder and herb butter. Then I'll stuff the cavity with garlic and bay leaves. And I'll use high-quality olive oil to baste it all over. Finally, I'll season it with salt, pepper, and a little more herb powder. Then it's ready to roast. The chicken will take a while to cook. "Mr. Valentine, I added a fried egg to your bread." The emperor didn't refuse. "If you're willing to make it, I'd love to have it." Soon, a sunny-side-up egg was fried. She placed it on the bread and gently pierced the yolk. The emperor took a bite of the egg and bread together. Just adding a fried egg makes it so delicious. The egg white is springy and the yolk is rich. There's no trace of that eggy smell. It's absolutely fantastic. Melly brought out a basket of vegetables, planning to make a simple vegetable dish. Instead of seasonings or sauces, Melly simply put the vegetables into the steamer, letting their natural flavors emerge. The emperor picked up a carrot. Not only was it vibrant in color, but also gave off a fresh, sweet aroma. He must have grown this himself. Such remarkable talent. Suddenly, he heard Melly exclaim, "How beautiful, truly beautiful." The emperor assumed she was complimenting him. He'd heard such flattery countless times throughout his life. Farmers had even been moved to tears by how well he portrayed a potato and how handsome he looked doing it. Hearing this, the emperor crushed the carrot in his hand. Melly was praising the potato's appearance. The emperor, however, mistakenly thought she was flattering him. When he realized the truth, he was so embarrassed he crushed the carrot in his hand. Melly asked, "Why did you crush it?" The emperor replied, "I was helping you prepare the ingredients. I just didn't control my strength." Seeing his eagerness to help, Melly placed a basket in front of him. "Then shell these beans for me." Shelling beans is the most fun part of preparing ingredients. I wouldn't let just anyone do it. The emperor looked at the beans in his hand. How absurd. He, the emperor of the empire, was shelling beans. Melly told him to keep shelling while she prepared the vegetables for steaming. She sliced the carrots and put them in the steamer. Then she quickly reappeared at the table, carrying a basket of baby corn. "This baby corn is so tender and sweet. You can eat the whole thing," she explained. The emperor learned something new. "I once got lost in a remote area near the border. No matter which way I went, all I saw was corn. It wasn't until I got out that I realized it was a wild cornfield. Since I didn't know you could eat this baby corn, I went hungry for a whole day." Melly was surprised by this strange adventure. He really was an odd one. The vegetables were steamed, and Melly served the emperor a plate. She wanted him to taste test them. The emperor tried a piece and found it delicious. Now these are real vegetables. The baby corn was juicy, sweet, and crisp. The perfectly cooked cauliflower and asparagus were equally delightful. Why were his own vegetables so bland, while everything she made was so flavorful? The roasted chicken was soon ready. The emperor offered to help carry it, but Melly brushed him off. The emperor observed her practiced movements as she brought the chicken to the table. She tore off a large drumstick for him. The emperor easily pulled off a piece, and his eyes widened as he took a bite. "Delicious. This is amazing. The drumstick was perfectly seasoned, just the right amount of salt. The salt and pepper on the crispy skin were savory. The tender, juicy meat of the drumstick practically melted in his mouth, and the vegetables beneath the chicken, soaked in the rich, flavorful juices of the meat, tantalized his senses. While not as good as the chicken, they were incredibly addictive. Melly brought him a glass of fruit and vegetable wine. The emperor took a sip and found it paired perfectly with the chicken. It enhanced the flavor of the delicious chicken, making him want to gnaw the bones clean. Melly watched him intently, her mood brightening as she saw how much he enjoyed her cooking. However, her stare made the emperor stop chewing abruptly. He thought he'd been eating too quickly and startled her. He cleared his throat. Your cooking is both rare and innovative. I think it will be a standout in the competition. Melly replied, hearing you say that makes me very happy. After finishing the roast chicken, Melly washed the dishes and put them away neatly. She thanked the emperor for helping her alter her dress so beautifully. The emperor told her she should understand the implications. I know to keep it a secret. I won't tell anyone. Even if I see you at the ball, I'll pretend I don't know you. The emperor made an excuse, saying he couldn't attend that thing at 5. Melly seemed a little disappointed. As the emperor was leaving, Melly called him to wait. She brought out the chick. I take back what I said about you abusing it. Tiberius, she said to the chick, if it weren't for him, you would have left this world long ago. Apologize to your uncle. The emperor quickly waved his hands, saying it wasn't necessary. Finally, Melly asked him to visit the farm after the competition and tell her the results. The emperor agreed and returned to his chambers. Sitting in his chair, the emperor recalled recent events. He had initially gone to the farm to find Melly's recipe, but he didn't know when his purpose had changed. Sometimes he even forgot his identity as emperor. There, he was just Mr. Valentine. Since childhood, he had always been the center of attention. Unconsciously, he had become very concerned about how others perceived him, like an actor who had been performing for 22 years, without a moment's rest. But whenever he went to the farm, he was too busy enjoying the delicious food to care about how others saw him. That must be why Louis and the others loved going to the farm so much. He supposed this could be considered gathering intelligence, but it wasn't her weakness. Thinking about all this, the emperor felt troubled. But there was another problem he had to address. Why would someone want to sabotage Miss Melly in the cooking competition? If they wanted to tamper with the food, they would surely use poison. Meanwhile, the chick tilted its head, looking at its owner. Melly wanted to see which direction Valentine had gone, but he disappeared with a whoosh. Melly couldn't even see which way he went. It seemed Mr. Valentine definitely had his secrets. Melly returned to the house, holding the chick, and looked at the fake menu in her hand. Since her goal had been achieved, it was probably useless now. Elsewhere, Katie told her mother that things were going too smoothly. Getting the competition menu so easily makes me uneasy. I think we should be more cautious. Before she could finish, a vase shattered at her feet. Her mother gripped her arm tightly. That farm girl is letting her guard down. Think about it. She's making sardine and jade pie to be unexpected. Katie, you won't disappoint us, will you? Do you even need my help with something this trivial? Of course, you don't need me to teach you. After all, you're my daughter, Katie Diabili. Katie trembled as she agreed with her mother. In the early hours of the competition day, Melly woke up early, yawning, to prepare the sardine and jade pie, determined to make it as unappetizing as possible. After all, she couldn't make anything truly disgusting while she was fully awake. She figured no one would actually eat something so unsightly. She only simply and perfunctorily cleaned the fish guts. Meanwhile, the servants in the palace were preparing for the ball. Athena, the duke's daughter, in a pink dress, walked towards them. Just a smile, and the servants were so charmed they almost fell off their ladders. The duke's daughter was exceptionally beautiful today, like an angel. Her companions couldn't help but praise her. The star of the ball tonight is definitely the duke's daughter. This comment hit Athena right where she liked it. As her companion was about to offer more compliments, a servant hurriedly approached Athena. You've put so much effort into dressing up. Why are you running around? You promised me you'd sit still. I'm sorry. I went to the Empress Dowager's chambers. I wanted her to see how I dressed up for the ball. The servant said, how thoughtful of you. How is Her Majesty the Empress Dowager? Her Majesty is in good spirits today. She held my hand and tenderly said, I hope you have a wonderful time at the ball. The servants were all happy for their young mistress. The mother-in-law and daughter-in-law genuinely care for each other. Truly a great imperial couple. Only after saying that did he realize he misspoke. The young mistress and the emperor haven't even had their wedding wedding yet. But what does it matter? It's only a matter of time. And lately, the emperor's frozen heart seems to be thawing. It's better to decorate the Grand Duchess's wedding dress with gems along the supervising lines. On that day, our Grand Duchess will surely be the most beautiful person present. A little while later, several people commented on how lively the garden would soon become. It's nice to experience this quiet garden before then. Athena said, "This is the advantage of living close by. Who else could arrive at the ball as quickly as I can?" She was immediately proven wrong. Melly, in a yellow dress, appeared before them. With her deep emerald green hair and delicate features, anyone would want to pinch her cheeks. It was also Athena's first time seeing Melly. The girl behind her exclaimed, "I know who she is. She's holding the basket for the cooking competition. I heard that the much-talked-about young lady will also be participating in the competition." What was that place surrounded by fences called again? All right, it's called a farm, I think. You mean that place by the woods? Of course, she'd be the first to arrive. After all, compared to the Grand Duchess's villa, that farm is much closer. Athena was a little unhappy upon hearing this. She opened her fan to hide her expression. Melly, having grown up beautiful, felt self-conscious walking down the street in this kind of dress for the first time. She felt like everyone was staring at her. After checking in the mirror to make sure her dress was all right, she carried her sardine and jade pie towards the competition venue. Upon arriving, she was informed that the competition tables weren't ready yet and was unceremoniously turned away. But just waiting at the entrance wasn't an option, so she decided to wander around the garden. It must be said, the palace garden was truly beautiful. As she walked, she suddenly stopped. She had discovered a very rare flower, a midnight rose. The chance of cultivating this rose is only 1 in 30,000. She hadn't expected to find such a large patch here in the garden. An elderly man nearby said, "Young lady, you seem quite knowledgeable. Who are you?" Melly explained that she ran a small farm. Because she planned to grow some flowers, she read magazines to learn about floriculture. And so, she chatted endlessly with the old man. After listening to her, the old man found the young lady more and more agreeable. This surprised the onlookers. Why was that eccentric master so enthusiastic? Seeing how busy he was, Melly decided to take her leave. This made the old man anxious. He had finally found a kindred spirit. How could he let her go so easily? He pulled Melly back, saying there were even more interesting flowers over there. Elsewhere, Louis complained to the emperor, "Preparing for this ball is exhausting. Thankfully, the ball will be over in a few hours and we'll be free." And there's bad news. Your usual distress signal for escaping the ball has been discovered. A sharp-eyed newspaper reporter publicized it. Now the whole empire knows, which means whether you knock over a glass or step on someone's toes, we won't be able to rescue you from this tedious ball. The emperor looked at the smug Louis, somewhat speechless. You don't have to worry about that. Louis assumed he had thought of another signal. Not only were they impressed by the emperor's innovative ability, but also how quickly he came up with a rescue signal completely different from the previous 29. The emperor denied it. Hearing the emperor's denial, Qian was excited, figuring he must have let something slip. "I've already arranged for 10,000 of my men to dress up as clowns and hold jigsaw puzzles. You can just watch and play puzzles from a distance. That should alleviate your boredom for a while." The emperor, somewhat irritated, didn't want to deal with them. Just as he was about to leave, Sigrid stopped him. "You haven't told us the solution yet." The emperor's mind was preoccupied with Melly. He had no time for this. Seeing the emperor leave, Louis wondered if he was secretly practicing dancing for the ball. He was planning to show off at the ball. Lorraine also found it strange. Why did he suggest a masquerade ball? "Everyone's whispering that the emperor must have some hidden agenda," Louis remarked. "Haven't you been fooled by him enough times? There must be something else going on," Louis said to Qian. Qian also remembered something. "Do you know what kind of mask the emperor prepared? It's completely airtight. Who wears a mask that covers their entire face these days?" Everyone was puzzled by the emperor's intentions. Meanwhile, the emperor was thinking about his plan involving Melly's fake menu. If the plan went smoothly, he would at least know who the mastermind was. Just then, the emperor saw the captain of the guard acting suspiciously. He was sneaking an apple. Due to health issues, he had been forbidden from eating any fruit. The emperor, needing a target, figured he'd make an example. He knew he'd be the center of attention at the ball, so he had to stop the mastermind without personally intervening. He had learned a touch of death technique long ago. He focused his energy in his palm and aimed at the red apple. With a loud boom, The apple was embedded in the tree trunk. The captain of the guard trembled in fear. Hiding in the shadows, the emperor felt a little embarrassed. He hadn't controlled his power well. Looks like I need more practice. Elsewhere, Kian and the others were wondering where the emperor had gone. They were eager to know what he was up to. Then Lewis spotted Melly in the distance and called out her name. Melly turned around and saw Lewis. She suddenly remembered she hadn't told him about the alterations to her dress. However, Lewis didn't notice anything different about the dress. He even bragged about how perfect the dress he'd given her was. He said it was practically made for her. Melly awkwardly explained that the dress had been altered. Lewis looked it over, but couldn't see any alterations. As long as it looks good, who cares? I didn't realize you were so skilled at altering clothes, Melly. Sigrid added, I've been so uneasy since that day. I even had a nightmare about a giant surveillance device on the dress. Melly reassured her, don't worry, the surveillance device has been turned into a bow. Sigrid apologized for her mistake that day. Kian stealthily crouched down below them, popping her head up to say, well, now that the problem's solved, I'm more curious about Lady Dubrill's basket. I heard she can keep freshly made food perfectly preserved for days. Melly opened the basket. The group, initially full of anticipation, were instantly taken aback by what they saw. Melly quickly closed the basket. She had placed the sardine pie on top. A brief silence fell over the group. Loren thought this was Melly's strategy. First attract everyone's attention with a comical appearance, then win them over with flavor. Melly awkwardly explained that wasn't the case and told them what had happened. Lewis was shocked that someone would try to sabotage Melly's competition entry. He asked her if she had any suspects. Melly said she didn't know. Someone secretly went to the farm and looked at the menu. Everyone started comforting Melly. Kian said there are all kinds of people in the world. This kind of thing happens often, whether in social circles or business. It's foolish to ruin someone else's hard work out of envy and jealousy. Kian went close to Melly and sniffed hard. Immediately, she covered her nose and mouth. For someone who hates fish like me, this smell is truly awful. Every year for my birthday, I receive all kinds of fish as gifts. They actually think that cat people must love fish. I'm really fed up with this prejudice. Melly quickly fanned away the stench in the air for her. I made it a little more dramatic to find the culprit. Lewis was interested in the sardine pie. Melly quickly moved the basket away, startled. This pie is terrifying. Didn't you see it? Lewis said, I trust your cooking more than my own eyes and nose. Melly said, thank you for believing in me, but I made this half asleep. I only tasted a bit of the oil on the surface and almost couldn't eat for the whole day. Lewis then gave up the idea of trying it. He looked at Kian and excitedly said, then we need to put it out there quickly. Melly didn't understand why they were suddenly so concerned. Sigrid said that the ball was too boring for them. Because we are the Emperor's closest confidants, we not only have to endure everyone's stares, but also deal with many people on the Emperor's behalf. During these boring times, this incident surrounding the cooking competition is perfect. With all the intrigue and sabotage surrounding the cooking competition, it's too interesting to miss. Don't worry, we'll help you. Melly entered the palace cooking competition, but her entry was a smelly and horrifying sardine pie. Everyone around her kept their distance, but Melly didn't seem to mind at all, because this was all part of her plan. Just then, music started playing in the hall. Kian immediately jumped up. How can it start before the battle positions are even set? Melly didn't understand what she meant by battle positions. Lewis explained, it's the inspection ceremony before entering the ball. It's a service provided by the state to cover up His Majesty's lack of sincerity. Everyone enjoys this ceremony. Miss Melly, would you like to experience it too? It's a rare opportunity. Melly declined Lewis's invitation. She wanted to stay there until she caught the person who tried to sabotage her dish. They smiled and bid Melly farewell for the time being. Soon after, the person in charge of the cooking competition began inspecting the entries. But as they walked, they smelled a foul odor. Who put unwashed socks here? Melly stepped forward. She said that besides the sardine pie, she had prepared another secret weapon, but she planned to reveal it later. Elsewhere, Katie, who was planning to do something bad, was extremely nervous. She picked at her thumb until it bled. She kept telling herself, I can do this. It's okay. Soon, she got her chance. Melly was chatting with an acquaintance. The person in charge of the cooking competition was called away. Katie quietly approached the sardine pie. After thinking it over, she finally reached out her hand. Just as Katie was about to succeed, Melly grabbed her hand. You'd better explain what you're doing. Katie, however, was strangely calm. What? What did I do? Don't play dumb. You were clearly trying to put something in my dish. Katie opened her grasped hand. Inside, there was only a single petal, which fell onto the table. Melly was taken aback. Katie said, "I was just removing the petal that fell on the pie. After all, I couldn't just stand by and watch someone's competition entry have impurities on it." Katie pulled her hand back. "I was only trying to help. It's ridiculous that you would suspect me." Melly was 100% sure he was lying. Just for a petal, getting close to that stinky sardine pie. Was it really necessary? And he even used his bare hands. And that dried up fallen petal. The spring flower ball is only held in June every year. On such an important day, how could there be any withered flowers? He must have prepared the petal in advance. After all, moving around the spacious ballroom would be risky. So he was just testing me. While Melly was thinking this over, a couple tasted the sardine pie and immediately cried out, "How could something be so disgusting? This is a terrorist attack." Melly hadn't expected that while Katie was testing her, Katie's parents would actually take a bite. Katie's mother shrieked, "Did you make this horrible pie? I can't believe someone would bring such a dish to the Supreme Palace cooking competition. And there's such a strong, fishy smell. I think you did this on purpose. And what did you mean earlier? My precious daughter was just trying to help you, and you treated her like a criminal. What are you trying to pull?" Melly was flustered by this barrage. Katie's father continued to yell, "I saw what you did to my child. And with that horrific food you made, you're not even qualified to participate in this competition." Just then, music began to play in the hall. The Emperor and the Grand Duke's daughter entered the ballroom. Everyone immediately began to murmur. Why is the Emperor entering so early? Didn't he used to hate balls? Is he starting to enjoy life now? All eyes were drawn to the Emperor. Melly breathed a sigh of relief. She thought it was just a coincidence. But in reality, the Emperor had been secretly listening to everything happening near Melly. When he heard Katie's mother questioning Melly, he couldn't sit still any longer. Just then, he heard a sound from outside. The Emperor went to the window. It was the mascot for the royal inspection ceremony, Sergio. He suddenly had an idea. Without a second thought, he pulled Athena along. Athena's heart began to pound as she was pulled along by the Emperor. It felt like walking on clouds. The Emperor, meanwhile, was thinking, "I need to get into the ballroom quickly. That way, everyone's attention will be on me, and Melly's crisis will be averted." He had seen how much effort Melly had put into this competition, and he had even participated in the development of her dish, albeit only as a taste tester. So he had to stop what was happening. To prevent any further complications, the Emperor quickly ordered the cooking competition to begin. The competition organizer announced, "Judging will be based on two aspects. The first is popularity. After the gentlemen and ladies have tasted the dishes, we will select the most popular ones. The second is judging by a panel. The judges will evaluate the completion of the dishes. All participating ladies are ready." Melly saw her chance and brought out her real dish, the roast chicken, which she had prepared earlier. Afterward, she gave herself a pep talk. But reality is often cruel. Everyone was attracted to the other expensive dishes. No one noticed Melly's seemingly ordinary roast chicken. The ingredients in the dish of the young lady next to her were worth at least 10 gold rings. For those noble ladies, the first place prize of a gold ring was nothing. What they wanted was the spotlight during the award ceremony. After all, fame couldn't be bought. Since everyone's goal was first place, she couldn't lose. Melly decided to take the initiative. Whenever someone inquired, she would recommend they try her dish. But they just glanced at it and declined. After all, its appearance couldn't compare to the others. This left Melly feeling a bit lost. Louis saw this and wanted to help her, but he was completely surrounded by nobles. He couldn't get away at all. The Emperor sat on his throne, also anxious. He cursed under his breath that the people below were all idiots. The most delicious food in the world was right in front of them, and they didn't even know it. At this rate, it would be impossible for Melly to win first place. Just then, a turning point came. Two elderly noblemen saw Melly and shouted, "Goddess Terra, what are you doing here?" Melly took a look. Weren't these the noble beggars who almost starved to death in the garden last time? She had given them a lot of food back then. She didn't expect to run into them again at the ball. Melly said, "I'm not Goddess Terra. I'm just a human. I run a farm in the palace. I'm participating in the cooking competition to raise operating funds for the farm." The two old men were embarrassed for a while. "It seems we were mistaken. But now is not the time for embarrassment. After all, the most delicious food in the world is right in front of us." The food you gave us last time was so delicious. We didn't expect you to have prepared so many delicious dishes today. They pushed each other, each wanting to be the first to try a bite. Melly handed them each a plate and told them to try whatever they wanted, as much as they wanted. After receiving the plates, they first picked up a piece of potato. Melly hadn't expected them to eat the vegetables first instead of the meat. After eating, the two were moved to tears. It was the first time they had tasted such delicious food. Can you tell us what this fresh and elegant dish is called? Melly said, "It's just ordinary steamed potatoes." The two were immediately shocked. Is this the barren crop we know as the potato? Melly was the best chef in the world, but now her creations at the cooking competition were ignored. This angered her two little fans. They immediately vouched for her, using their noble status as a guarantee. This roasted potato is absolutely the most delicious food in the world. With their commotion, Melly's previously depressed mood lightened considerably. She poured each of them a glass of fruit and vegetable wine. One old man tasted it. Soft on the palate, sweet at first. Good wine. This also piqued the curiosity of a noblewoman nearby. These two old men had recently been at odds over territory issues, bickering whenever they met. But now they both agreed that these dishes were incredibly delicious. Seeing a new customer, Melly offered her a piece of potato. After taking a bite, the lady was astonished. It was a flavor she had never experienced in her 62 years of life. The man behind her said, "It's normal that you haven't tried it. This kind of crop grows in the dirt, covered in mud and bugs. It's absolutely filthy, so it would never appear on a nobleman's table." The lady was shocked upon hearing this. Seeing her reaction, the man was about to throw away the potato for her, but she roared, "What shocks me isn't the potato, but that we've all been deceived by the potato monopolizers. They deliberately spread negative rumors and then monopolize this delicious food. These potatoes must be piled up in some secret warehouse right now." The two old men listened and agreed with her reasoning. Melly was bewildered. "I can't keep up with your imaginations." At that moment, a little boy tugged on his mother's clothes. He said he also wanted to try the food from the farm. His mother thought it would definitely taste strange, but the little boy insisted on eating it, especially after seeing those noble adults enjoying it so much. Unable to refuse her son, the mother asked Melly for some chicken. Melly was delighted. After receiving the chicken, the mother didn't smell the strange odor she had imagined. Instead, she felt a delicious aroma emanating from it. The little boy stood beside her, mouth wide open, waiting for his mother to feed him. But the mother couldn't resist taking a bite herself. After finishing it, she found it incredibly delicious. She tasted the flavor of happiness. So, the Countess asked Melly for more chicken, which piqued the curiosity of the other noble women. The Countess was known for being a picky eater. Unexpectedly, even she was full of praise for the farm food. Thus, through a continuous chain reaction, more and more people headed towards Melly. Melly hadn't expected so many people to suddenly come over. She forced herself to stay calm. She tried to ensure everyone received a similar amount of food. After everyone had tasted it, they all sang Melly's praises. Seeing this scene, the emperor was anxious. He also wanted to join the ranks of the food enthusiasts. However, due to his imperial status, it wasn't appropriate for him to personally join the crowd. So he kept standing up and sitting down in his seat. Athena also noticed something was off about him today. The emperor seemed to be constantly watching someone. Could it be that black-haired noblewoman? This made Athena feel a sense of crisis. Meanwhile, Katie weaved through the crowd, heading towards Melly. Athena saw this and thought, isn't she cutting in line? Could the emperor like girls who cut in line? Melly was still busy distributing the food. A young noblewoman wanted some potatoes. Just as Melly handed them to her, a figure suddenly appeared in front of her. Melly quickly grabbed the person's hand, loudly demanding to know what they were doing. Seeing her plan fail again, Katie tried to open the small bottle in her hand. Melly saw it too. The next moment, the small bottle was blown away by a strange gust of wind. It was unknown where it landed. Katie suddenly cried out, pretending to be hurt by Melly. The surrounding people murmured amongst themselves. Katie's mother was exasperated. How could this girl fail at such a simple task? Her father reminded her that now was not the time to discipline their child. Everyone had seen Katie's actions. If they made a fuss, it would only make their whole family look bad. He told his wife to quickly find the bottle and hide it. He would handle the rest. Melly was also surprised. She didn't understand where the wind had come from that blew the thing out of Katie's hand. Suddenly, she heard someone call Tiberius's name. She recognized the voice. It was Mr. Valentine, but he had clearly said he couldn't attend the ball. Before Melly could figure it out, Katie's father shouted, "This is outrageous. If you didn't want to share the food, you could have just said so. Why be so rough with my daughter?" Hearing this, the two old men immediately stepped forward to defend Melly. They accused Katie's father of misleading everyone. "It was clearly your own daughter who was trying to sprinkle something on the food." Katie's father pulled a small bottle from his pocket. "My daughter was trying to sprinkle clove powder. She has a sensitive stomach, so she carries this with her to sprinkle on her food. It just happened to roll to my feet." Melly shouted, "You're lying. The bottle just now wasn't filled with clove powder. It was a purple liquid." Katie's mother, hiding behind him, shook her head at her husband, indicating she hadn't found the bottle. Katie's father immediately understood. If it can't be found, it must have been stepped on and broken by someone. So he said, "You say the bottle contained a purple liquid. Then where is it now? Find it." Melly was startled. A strong gust of wind had suddenly appeared and blown it away. She didn't know where. Katie's father continued to scoff. "A strong gust of wind. The windows here are all closed. Where'd a strong gust of wind come from? If you're going to make excuses, at least make them believable. Do you take everyone here for fools? I think you're just getting arrogant because you've achieved a little success in the competition." Melly was furious. "If I can find that purple bottle, will you admit you were trying to poison my food?" Katie's father was now in a difficult position, forced to agree. Sigrid and Kian also noticed the commotion around Melly, so they went to find Luili and the others. As soon as Luili heard Melly was in trouble, she rolled up her sleeves, ready to fight. Melly, however, didn't want to make a big fuss. Katie's father, on the other hand, wanted to blow the situation out of proportion. Currently, he could prove his own innocence. Luili was finally calmed down. Suddenly, he had another idea. He turned to his three subordinates, who immediately looked eager. "We've been waiting. Let's initiate the battle plan." A mother told her daughter to poison someone else's food, but she was caught red-handed. Seeing this, Katie's father immediately turned the tables and demanded proof. "Then show us the proof." But Melly had clearly seen the purple bottle blown away by the wind. Seeing she had no proof, Katie's father pulled a small bottle from his pocket, claiming his daughter had only intended to sprinkle clove powder. He claimed he carried it for his upset stomach to use when needed. A nearby lady questioned this. Then she should have sprinkled it on her own food. Why sprinkle it on all the dishes? Another man agreed. That stuff definitely wasn't a spice. Meanwhile, the two older men were searching everywhere for the purple bottle. Katie's father saw that public opinion was siding with the young woman. Melly also noticed this. It turned out the knights had surrounded them at some point. They formed a large barrier, preventing the situation from escalating. Melly knew Luili was helping her. Feeling everyone's trust, she was filled with courage. She calmed down and carefully recalled the details of the incident. When the bottle was blown away by the wind, she had heard Mr. Valentine's voice. He certainly wouldn't have mentioned Billow's shadow for no reason. Could have been some kind of hint. Suddenly, Melly thought of something. She asked Katie's father again, "If I find that bottle, will you admit this was a plot you orchestrated?" Katie's father still thought she was stalling for time. Melly thought, "You're given a chance, but you're not taking it." So she started searching. Soon, Melly spotted a painting of a peacock on the wall. The large peacock in the painting was followed by a group of peachicks with fluffy feathers, quite similar to Billow. Then Melly noticed a potted plant nearby and fumbled around it. Sure enough, she found it. She thought Katie's father would keep his word. But Katie's mother stepped forward, claiming Melly had hidden it there herself. Theoria couldn't stand it anymore. She took the bottle from Melly. Very few craftsmen in the country possess the skill to create this type of bottle. Just by investigating their transaction records, we'll know if there are any familiar names on it. Apothecary Benich also stepped forward. That name will also appear in my records. Melly was surprised. How the palace apothecary? Theoria whispered to her that she sensed something was wrong and quickly brought him. Benich poured the purple liquid out of the small bottle. Upon close inspection, it was just as he suspected. "Count and Countess Diabili, I accuse you of smuggling the 18th ranked poisonous plant, Dien Kwai, into the palace." The onlookers were terrified to hear the name Dien Kwai. How could such a thing appear here? Katie's father tried to argue, "You're slandering me," but everyone around him was murmuring. He shouted furiously, "This is a mistake. I mixed it up with the medicine I regularly take." Confused, seeing no one believed him, Katie's father angrily turned to his daughter. With a slap, he knocked Katie to the ground. He yelled, "You can't even do this small thing right. You useless thing." Katie's mother immediately stepped forward, feigning concern. She claimed everything she did was for her daughter's benefit. Who doesn't want their child to be the most dazzling one? Is there something wrong with that? The captain of the guard, unable to stand it any longer, had the family of 3 taken away. Melly rightfully won first place in the cooking competition. After the ball, Melly thanked Theoria and Benich for their help. Theoria said it was her duty and that she was happy to have been able to help. Just then, the captain of the guard approached Melly. He told Melly that the emperor had said the punishment for the Diabili family was up to her. Theoria thought this was strange. It clearly wasn't the emperor's style. He always discussed matters big and small before making a decision. What was going on this time? Was it too much trouble? Melly felt the emperor must have ulterior motives. He likely assumed she would be magnanimous and forgive them, requesting leniency. That way, everyone would be satisfied. But Melly decided differently. She would punish them using the methods of the farm. When pests or diseases are found on the farm, the first thing to do is observe the affected area and then remove it completely to prevent recurrence. Count Diabili, even faced with decisive evidence, showed no shame, instead appearing both aggrieved and indignant. This suggested it wasn't his first time committing such an act. Before stripping him of his title and banishing them from the capital, a thorough investigation into any other crimes was necessary. They would be dealt with according to the law once everything was uncovered. The captain of the guard agreed with Melly's decision. Melly suddenly thought of Katie. The captain said she would be permanently banned from the palace. She had been coerced by her parents, so she wouldn't receive the same punishment as them. But even with leniency, her reputation was ruined. Melly returned to the farm and thought for a long time. Finally, she went out and found Katie in the church. Melly said, "I think you're impressive. You followed me from the beginning of the cooking competition preparations, stole my menu from the farm, and then slipped past so many people at the ball. You almost succeeded. That's not something just anyone can do. Your tenacity and persistence are truly remarkable. I also heard about your mother, always talking about how outstanding other daughters are, using that to pressure you. But why do we have to be better than others?" Katie looked up at Melly. "What are you trying to say?" Melly stood up. "What I mean is, as long as you're happy, that's all that matters. Miss Katie, have you ever thought about living the life you want, not the life your parents want for you?" Melly turned and left. Katie saw she had left a basket. Opening it, she found cream bread. She couldn't hold back her tears any longer and began to cry.